This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
You're wrong! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakelin. Did you put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking.
And Ted Terranova in the third chair.
Get in the fight.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming out at the speed of a furious Booker DeWitt, flush with vigor and cranking along the slick rails of the Sky Rails. This edition is brought to you by Phil McPeaky-Squeak, who wants you to know that the Chichester Gaming Society invites invite you to ChiCon on November 30th in the UK. Check out www.tcgsonline.co.uk for details. And remember, vive la pole! Tonight, our panelists are, as always, Russ John Wilkes Wakelin and Ted Robert Luteci Terranova, the revolutionary mind behind Rivet Wars. Let's begin. Issue number 1, rivets are permanent mechanical fasteners which, before being installed, consist of a smooth cylindrical shaft with a head on one end, also coincidentally providing a terribly cute shape for bloodthirsty competence in an alternative war-torn reality. The end opposite of the normal head of the rivet is called the bucktail. On installation, the rivet is placed in a punched or drilled hole, and the tail is upset or bucked, so that it expands to up to 1.5 times the original shaft diameter, holding the rivet in place. Question: how many standard types of rivets are commonly used in construction purposes, not in miniature board games? Round Oscar Russ.
I'm going to go with 16.
Semitubular Ted.
I'll go with a baker's dozen.
And that would make you both wrong! 8. Ready? Solid, semitubular, blind, Oscar drive, flush, friction lock, and self-pierce. You have never known as much about rivets as you do right now. Issue number 2. When trying to formulate plans to make folks buy their stuff, marketers typically combine several variables to find a demographic profile. They do this to create an imaginary potential customer to better craft their messages when trying to get people to spend their money. Usually, marketers will take into account 5 demographics when formulating these profiles: age, gender, income level, race, and ethnicity. Question: when planning marketing plans in the gaming industry, what demographic is missed from these 5 that make or break a campaign? Rockbridge Associates Russ.
I'm going to go with female demographic.
Taylor Neslin Sophris Ted.
The type of car you drive.
Russ, that would be gender, which is Ted, that was interesting, but wrong! Clearly from the latest episode of The Lost Chapters, you know folks marketing to gamers have to consider the social awareness demographic, or more commonly referred to as the "why aren't you talking to me" demographic. Issue number 3. The term pressing your luck refers to the phenomenon of expecting good fortune to continue indefinitely or for bad luck to hold off just long enough. More and more often we see a push your luck element in board games where players are given the chance to take fate into their own hands, quite often resulting in them plummeting to their doom, or rather, hopefully, only their game pieces taking such a plunge. This mechanic can be quite frustrating, however, when playing with folks with much better considered luck than yours. Question: give me the name of either the host or the announcer for the U.S. game show Press Your Luck, which aired from 1983 to 1986. For partial credit, give me the chant associated with this game. Mike Wallace Wakelin.
No whammies, no whammies, no whammies, stop!
Sheldon Turcotte Terranova.
Bob Barker.
Unfortunately, Russ took the partial credit from you and left you with Bob Barker, which is wrong. That would be Peter O'Markin, which I would be very surprised if you knew, but Rod Roddy was the announcer. And of course, as Russ said, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies, go!
Stop.
Whatever. Issue number 4. Once again, alternate history or alternative reality is a type of fiction consisting of stories set in worlds in which one or more historical events unfold differently than in the real world. It can be variously seen as a subgenre of literary fiction, science fiction, and historical fiction. Different alternate history works may use tropes from any or all of these genres. Another occasionally used term for the genre is allo history.
Ooh.
Which literally means other history in some language I was unable to fathom. I don't know who uses the term allo history, but anyway. Question! When As Close as You Can Come was the first example of alternate history fiction published? Looking backward, Russ.
Oh, geez. I don't know. How about 1910? I have no idea.
Traveler from Altruia, Ted.
I'll say 1899.
Oh, that's so close. It should be partial credit. It really. I'll give you partial credit for having the right century, and so I can still say wrong to Russ. In the 19th century, again, for partial credit. For first example, completely, a revisionist history of French public 1836 about the world that Napoleon had won. And
Okay.
anyway, then a couple of English stories in 1845, and then a novel in 1895, both utopian views of alternate reality. Ah, perfection, thou art slippery. That's all we've got for this episode. Thank you for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by GameSalute.com. Check out gaming news or find out what the new hotness is on Springboard. GameSalute.com.
And by Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And by Conquistador Games, focusing on immersive and thematic games. More details at cqgames.com.
And by Cool Mini or Not, the vanguard of a new genre bringing minis and board games together. CoolMiniOrNot.com.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And Wargame Soldiers and Strategy Magazine, making historical wargaming less scary and more fun.
And by MiniatureMarket.com. Want an even better deal? Like them on Facebook and click the D6G logo. Hello!
Hello!
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 129 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Ted Terranova.
Hey, Ted, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me here. It's really cool to be here.
Can we call you Rivet Head?
You can, but please don't.
Ted, of course, is the man, the brain, the visionary. May I say visionary? I'm going to. Visionary behind Rivet Wars. And so we are so excited to have you on the show today, Ted. And for part of the show, we're going to talk to you about, your origin story in the gaming universe, and then also how did this wacky idea of an alternate reality World War I rivet-based game come to life?
Rivets.
Yes. And then later, we're going to review another alternate history board game, Bioshock Infinite, the board game.
I don't know you can call Rivet Wars alternate history because they've got an alternative map and everything else. It's more like a different reality.
Okay. All right. Ted, what would you say? Is it alternate reality or is it alternate history, or is it just not even remotely the same?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of based on history,
Yeah.
but it's not. They're not humans, so it's not really an alternate human history. So I would just say it is kind of like an all different world kind of thing. But but it's based definitely on World War I and some of that.
So it's more like a parallel universe where everyone's a rivet.
Exactly.
Okay.
There
fair
you go.
enough. All right, we'll go with that.
By our universe.
Yes.
Informed by our history.
Informed. Right.
Yes.
Okay. So before we get to all that excitement, though, we have a couple little bits of business here. First, Craig, we are running a contest.
We are.
Now, do you remember what the contest parameters are here?
I do.
Would you like to share them?
I will.
Okay.
We're asking you to create a massive work of art. That's right. We want something akin to the Nike statue with all of the arms and heads in place, or maybe the Mona Lisa. However, we realize that shipping and handling costs an awful lot.
Right.
So instead, what we're asking for you in a very pithy little 30-second statement, describe to us the work of art that we know that you already created, because that would be cheating if you just described something that you hadn't created. So create an absolute work of art, and then in 30 seconds, describe that work of art to us. And Ross, what would the theme of this work of art be?
Well, see, for the contest, we're giving away 2 great games from our friends at Stronghold Games. We're giving away Core Worlds plus the Core Worlds expansion, and Crude, the game about oil baronry. Is that a word? It is
baronry.
now.
I like
baronry. So
phrase.
What you need to do is come up with a piece of artwork that'll encapsulate both those things. Like, if you imagine, and Ted, maybe this is in your wheelhouse, because if you imagine, there's a lot of rivets on an oil rig.
Right.
And then if you combine those rivets with, the rivets on a spaceship from Core Worlds, How could you combine that into one giant piece of art and then describe it in 30 seconds or less in a soundbite? See, that's the kind of information we're looking for, right? Just an example. So, and what we're going to do is at the next episode, where it will be the deadline. So, I think middle of July. Let's just call it July 15th. How about that? Get everything in here. And we're going to then we'll go and we're going to count up all the entries. We're going to review them, and we'll play our favorites on the show. And then someone will pick the winner, and you will get a copy shipped to you of Core Worlds, the expansion, and Crude, all to the same person. Look at that! One winner gets it all. How awesome is that? So can't wait to do that. And remember to send your entries to contest@the d6generation.com, or go to our website and click the little telephone number in the corner and leave us a voicemail if you'd like. Either way,
there you go. You can
101 ways to do it. Now, also, we have another big announcement, Craig.
Leave your entry. What?
Yes, we have another big announcement coming up at Gen Con's coming soon, you know.
Yes, we're back to announcing Gen Con.
We are. It's almost... Ted, are you going to Gen Con this year?
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Nice.
I'm going to be demoing Rivet Wars and stuff, so it should be cool.
Do you think you'll have like a final version of Rivet Wars there, like the production copy?
I don't know. It's at the factory. I saw some pictures of the guys. They're getting made, the miniatures, but I don't know right now.
Well, we will be there too, and we are going to be running our annual, now it's annual, Craig, see that? Annual, air quotes.
It's been annual for a while now.
Yeah, third year? Fourth year? I can't remember. Anyway, Play by Mob. So Friday.
Fourth year.
Friday, 1 p.m. Check the Gen Con, go to gencon.com there and sign up for our event. We have 100 seats. Should be enough, but it's already starting to fill up. So get in there, sign up. It is totally free. There's no registration fee for this event, right?
Absolutely not.
No, that'd be ludicrous. And we're going to record this session live. We usually do rapid fire there, so you get to be part of that. We'll do a little segment of the show. You get to be part of that, and then there'll be some kind of play by mob event where everyone in the audience, not just a select few. It's not like we draw 4 or 5 random people out and they play. No, the entire audience will participate in some kind of wacky play by mob event.
That's right. And rumor has it the venue for this game this year may include a world famous pub.
Will it?
It might.
Okay. Well, I don't know, but you never know. So let's see what's going to happen with that. Sometimes we bring in world-class game designers to help us design these games. You never know what's going to happen. So anyway, please sign up for that. Join us on Friday, 1 o'clock on Friday, and we hope to see you there at Gen Con.
Because we'll be gone.
It's also the only guaranteed spot that Craig, Nicole, and I will be in the same spot.
That is
the rest of the weekend, we're all over the place. Who can tell? And we'll be giving out D6G buttons and patches. Right. It's a hoot.
Using Russ's Twitter feed most regularly.
Right. So there's that going on. And then, of course, also we just did the Lost Chapters, and Ted was kind enough to join us in Dunkin' Donuts. Ted, do you remember we discussed in Dunkin' Donuts there?
I forget. What were we talking about at Dunkin' Donuts?
We talked about something that you are probably an expert on at this point, and that is what do we use to decide on whether or not to pick a game on Kickstarter and back it?
Right.
We talked about purchasing in general,
yes,
and then Kickstarter in particular.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting we kind of analyzed what we did to pick a game off a shelf, sort of impromptu.
It was interesting how we all had different kind of criteria.
Yeah, and then how does that translate to Kickstarter? Because you can't touch or feel it. You haven't actually seen it yet. So how do you do that? So if you want to know what we do, whether or not that's helpful to you or not, but check that out. It's episode 58, book 58 of the Lost Chapters. And Craig, how do folks sign up for that and get involved?
Well, you go to our website, www.the d6generation.com, and you'll see a nice little stack of books over on the right. You click on that, and it'll bring you right to where you need to go.
Exactly right. And also, one last plug for our website there. If you go to our website, you happen to be hanging out there, and you're like, I want something to read, click on the game list at the top of the website, because that lists every single game,
G-capital-L,
we have ever reviewed on the show in alphabetical order, and then tells you a quick blurb of Craig and my little quick summary, and then also the episode number we reviewed the game. So if you ever like, you know what, did Craig and Russ and Rafe or anybody on that show ever review A Touch of Evil? Well, yes, we did. And if you go to the game list, you'll find the episode out. How about Arcane Legions? We did that too, although you may not be able to buy that anywhere. Or how about Are You the Traitor? Maybe the Ares Project, or whatever. Dystopian Wars, Eclipse. You name the game, it's on there, alphabetical order, and find out if we ever reviewed the game or not.
You did.
And if it's not on there, send us an email and say, hey, I'd like you to review this game, guys, and we'll put it in the hopper. Maybe we'll get to it. You never know.
You never can tell.
So that's a lot. So what's the time now for, Craig?
Right about now, it's probably time for Achievements in Gaming.
Oh, no, the achievement noise was stuck. Wait, hang on. Let me just beat the... It's not really replying here. It's give me trouble here. I'm gonna need a little more effort on this achievement noise here. It's give me some flack. Try again. There it goes. Oh, whew. For a minute there, I thought my 360 had red ring to death on me. Okay, so, and the shout out this time for achievements in gaming is join WWPD.net, the world's premier Flames of War podcast, for their live show at Historicon. Wish Steve McClellan a fond farewell before he leaves for Battlefront, New Zealand. Hey, good luck on that gig, Steve. And that noise, by the way, is the official achievement noise, meaning that you have done something or described something worthy of geeky attention. Played a game, read a book.
Using it ironically.
I'm using it ironically, or maybe I just hit the button late and it's just blinging in the middle. Who can say?
That happens quite often.
So let's start with Ted. I've been talking so much. Ted, what have you been playing lately?
Well, we've been working on the Air War for Rivet Wars,
Ooh,
so we've been checking out Wings of Glory. I hadn't played that before, so I was kind of interested. So, kind of digging that. It's a little different than I think what we're going to do with Rivet Wars. But,
I was going to say, are you going to have like Wings of Glory mini game inside of Rivet Wars? Because that'd be pretty amazing.
No, but I really dig the whole being able to like program what your plane's going to do, and then kind of seeing what the other guy's going to do, and that's just kind of a cool mechanic. I think with Rivet Wars, we'll do a more turn-based kind of thing like the rest of the game. But it's just kind of a cool game. And my friend Darren is coming over tomorrow, and he got Star Wars X-Wing. So
nice.
I'm excited to check that out. I haven't played that before, so
I think you'll like it. It's very good, and of course, it's based heavily on Wings of Glory, so it's great.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. He also got the Millennium Falcon, so
sweet.
he hasn't tried that out yet. So
yeah, the Lambda shuttle's out soon. Can't wait for that.
Is it?
And the Moldy Crow. Yeah, very soon.
Moldy Crow.
Do you know what the Moldy Crow's from, Craig? Little Star Wars trivia. What's that?
A video game?
Which video game?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't count if it's a video game.
Ted, do you know which video game the Moldy Crow is?
No.
It's from the first Jedi Knight video game. The one with the lightsaber. Jedi Knight. Anyway, moving along. What else have you been playing, Ted?
Well, yeah, I don't have much time to play games except when I'm hanging out with my kids. So we've been playing Cathedral with them. My son's a little young for it, but I think he kind of is getting it, and we kind of play like a simplified version. And Cartoona, I think I was telling you guys, you recommended that, Russ.
Yes,
and,
I tried out.
Yeah, and I got that, and they really dig playing it. The 5-year-old can kind of gets the rules, and then the younger one just kind of puts together creatures. But
I like how
that's pretty fun.
And there's layers in the game too, right? So you can play it very simply, and then you can add more complexity as you go along. It's great with kids as they grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I like that like layers of stuff, so you can play at different levels.
Sweet. So you're playing Star Wars X-Wing soon.
Yeah. Nice. Gonna play that tomorrow, and then we might play Descent too.
Oh, nice.
I know. I've been following you. You've been playing your game and talking about that.
Playing.
Well, so yeah, why don't we just segue then into my? Are you all done there, Ted, on the games?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just jump in next year, Craig. It's a great segue. We just finished our Descent campaign.
How'd that go?
Cool.
Well, okay, so
did you win?
Well, okay, so I had up to this final bout. So in early April, which was now several months ago, we had finished the entire campaign except for a half last mission and then the final encounter, the final quest. So. And for various reasons, schedules, blah, 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 we ended up waiting 2 months to play the final battle. So we go into the final battle, final level. They hose me in the final level again, so I've not won a single game going into the very final, the finale. So we're going into the finale. And so the heroes always get the first turn. So I've got this dragon in the finale, right? The dragon's got 20 hit points. And if the dragon ever gets down below, any time during my turn, I can have the dragon eat the Overlord character, basically turn on his master, and then gain back another 8 or 9 hit points, whatever it is, 12 more hit points. So, great. So, anyway, the heroes go. The first hero attacks, does like 9 points of damage. The second hero attacks, does like 9 more points of damage. The third hero attacks, kills the dragon. I haven't gone yet. Kills the dragon. And the fourth hero attack never has to happen. And I lose the game without even moving a muscle. So, the finale was very anticlimactic, even more anticlimactic than the Sea of Blood finale that the players didn't like very much that one. So, definitely lost that one hard. I'm not going to lie. Didn't go well.
Did you write a nasty letter?
No, because I had fun the whole campaign. And they did never lose. They never lost. So it kind of felt like they were clearly in the seat of dominance, and they should have dominated the finale also. But it would have been kind of nice if I had at least had a move.
That would make a pretty funny fantasy novel.
It would be. I mean, it would have been hilarious if I could somehow won the whole thing.
That was funny.
Yeah, but so anyway, I definitely am leaning towards the side that it is a little hard for the Overlord, especially if your heroes are all well coordinated and really gamery gamers. But we do see on the forums a lot of people complaining that it's too hard for the heroes. So I don't know if we just had a nasty combination of heroes or whatever it was, but I'm not put off. I want to play some more, but I play it more as if I'm a GM and less as if I'm trying to actually win. Like the experience of playing is fun for me. It's less I want to win. Although I'd like to win once in a while just to make feel like it's tough for the heroes. Because even a D&D game, you really want the heroes to come in and one-shot your big bad guy before he even gets to move. I mean, it's not kind of anticlimactic. So that was a little disappointing, but hopefully I am picking up. I'm still not deterred from buying the brand new campaign coming out this month. So I'm going to get that, and I'm hoping that maybe the Overlord, I know it's got a whole new set of Overlord cards, and I'm kind of hoping it kicks the Overlord up a notch. Gives me a little more power, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, that was a little disappointing. But we were proud to have completed it. Let's see. And speaking of sagas, I'm still in the middle of the epic saga that is the Podcaster Diplomacy play-by-email system game here. And so I think we hinted last time that when Jeff Ingleton was on the show that Jeff is England, I am France, and Dan Yarrington from Game Salute is Germany. There was an alliance there, but Jeff has since backstabbed Germany. And so now there is a small agreement that I'm hoping is still holding between France and England. All the action is still happening in a way that looks like Germany, and that for England and I still think. I have not turned on Germany, but pretty much England is pretty much ready to destroy Germany. By the time this goes live, Germany will either be dead or have somehow pulled themselves out of.
England?
What's that? Jeff is England.
Jeff is England.
Yeah, so Jeff has backstabbed Dan. Now, we were backstabbing Stephen Bonacore, so I did backstab Stephen Bonacore.
And we got a nasty email because of that.
Well,
thank you.
Yes, so things are breaking down now sort of on Publisher Alliance, because Game Salute is an advertiser on our show. So clearly I can't backstab him. Well, Stronghold Games is obviously publishing Jeff Engelstein's Space Cadets and the Dice Duel game. So that's why that's my supposition as to why he backstabbed Dan, who is not publishing. I told Dan to write Jeff an email and offer to publish his game when Steven doesn't after he praise him, but that doesn't seem to work out. So I'm not. Meanwhile, the other side of Europe, I don't know what's going on over there. It's a giant disaster. But right now, I'm in an okay spot, but I know that if England turns on me at any moment, it'll get ugly. But I think I could equally mess him up. So right now, there's sort of mutually assured destruction alliance between me and England right now. That's all I can really.
All those nasty emails about the French are starting to make sense.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes. Yeah, that might be me. So that's fun. I'm having a fun time with that game. Then I've been playing an awful lot of War Machine. I've been playing just about every week. And I played a big game with Rafe. He defeated me handily in this last battle, actually, with his Vlad on a horse versus Epic Striker. And then I played another game with our friend Blake, friend of the show Blake here. Blake is, I would call Blake our one of our pro gamers in our gaming group. He's pretty much, once Blake digests a rule system, he is one of those guys who's nigh unstoppable. Doesn't really matter the game. Doesn't matter the game. He's just good at it. So Blake is very, very good at Malifaux, very, very good at War Machine, very, very good at Warhammer 40,000. And so I pretty much know going into the game with Blake that I'm going to probably lose. It's just a matter of, am I entertaining him, A, and B, am I going to make him do something really elegant? And he did. He did something really cool to me this time. He actually came in and did all kinds of cool telekinesis and moved all my stuff around in a way that I didn't think was humanly possible, and basically got to attack my Warcaster in the back with a Colossal in the end, which was pretty impressive. And I died horribly, but it was kind of fun to watch. So, and I made a comic book about that also. I've been using my little comic book program. So I've been having fun with that also. So that was great. And then also I played the Duke. I broke out the Duke. Our friends at Catalyst Game Labs sent us a review copy of the Duke. And Craig, I want to show you this. It's a great little abstract. I think I talked about it briefly before. You play it on a chessboard. All the pieces are wooden. And on each piece is a little tiny grid drawn into it that shows you the movement pattern of that piece. So and you reach into a bag each turn. Well, each turn you have an option. You can either move a piece, as described on the piece, or you can reach into a bag and basically summon a new piece to the table and put it adjacent to your Duke. Now, your Duke is like the king in chess. He's powerful, unlike the king. He's kind of like the king and queen. But if he dies, you lose the game. So you bring up this new piece, and then you put it on the board, and you start using it. But the other twist to the game is whenever you move a piece, you flip it over, and on the reverse side is a different movement pattern for that piece. So it goes back and forth, changing its movement pattern, making the game really interesting, and a lot of interesting little maneuvers you can do. Played it with Ryan, one of our friends there, and we played 4 games in a row, because A, it's very fast, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops, and B, it's just very addictive because you want to play again. I want to play again and try to. It's like a quick game. It's not as long as chess, but it's not as short as checkers. Somewhere in the middle there.
Huh.
A lot of fun with that. So that's what I've been playing for board games. Craig, how about you?
What have I been board games? Well, let's see. I'm going to start with miniatures games. I got 2 games of Malifaux 2E in.
Yay.
Enjoying that still, although I have to side with the people who are saying the way you use soul stones has totally changed in 2nd edition.
Yeah.
And one of the ways you can use them is defensively when you're being attacked. If a model has used soul stone ability and it's being attacked, it can use a soul stone, and what that does is it gives it a positive flip in defense, which can be big, but it also gives the enemy a negative flip in damage, which is huge because that means now you cannot cheat the damage.
Oh.
Which means I was playing with the Victorias, and I throw the sword-wielding Victoria out there. She's like my super heavy-hitting hand-to-hand person. She goes out there like with a Hail Mary. This is make or break the game for me because I was kind of in a rough position. And she goes out there with her swords. I throw down the red Joker, best card in the game, but because he used a soul stone, all I could do was minor damage. And there was nothing I could do. It kind of threw me back into the original Malifaux.
So should they remove the reducing damage flip? Maybe just give you a bonus defensive flip?
Exactly. From what I've been gathering, talking to our local henchmen, it seems like a lot of people feel this is too strong because none of the other ways that you use a soul stone really gives you multiple benefits.
So really, everybody uses their soul stones for that. It's the ultimate maneuver.
That seems to be the agreement locally, at least, that's the way you use the soul stone, unless you're really in the corner and you need initiative or something like that, because you can still use it to reflip it. There's no more adding any cards together. It's always looking for the highest card. So they got rid of that. But the key was, like, here I was with my one big piece. I threw it out there. I had everything in place. That one use of a soul stone robbed me of the best card in the whole game. So the best card in the game comes up, which only comes up maybe once or twice a game if you're lucky, in a way that's really going to help you. And a very standard, normal, mundane use of a soul stone, boom, basically negated it.
Oh, ouch. So
it really, really, really bugged the crap out of me. And the game ultimately came down. I lost by 1 because I misunderstood one of my mission things. But I still liked the game a lot. It wasn't like anything that I would say was mechanical that was deep, in-depth, that I didn't get or didn't understand. I really kind of knew what everything was. I grokked, as you will. If you will, onto what was going on. But that one soulstone use that was like, I throw one of my soulstones and bing, all of a sudden, like, I've got this great thing that I thought was going to be awesome, and it's completely useless. It's all but completely useless. So that was very frustrating.
Oh, dear.
But I still enjoy it. I played Bioshock Infinite, and we'll talk about that later in the show.
Yes.
And we afterwards actually got Spartacus, the Serpent and the Wolf expansion to the team. So yes, indeed, we got to see a Primus. Not only did we get to see a Primus, and that, of course, is 2-on-2 4 gladiator combat all at the same time.
Was that cool?
Team against team, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. We also got to see one of the rare treachery cards turn up, which allows for a very specific type of gladiator to turn on his teammates in the middle of the arena.
Wow.
So, and you don't get to choose who your opponent is. Basically, the host invites 4 people, just like normal, and then out of those 4 people, crafts what the makeup of the 2 teams is going to be. So having a gladiator in there that has the treacherous keyword allows for you even more like money making opportunities for the host.
Wow.
You're like, give me 2 coins or you're going in with the traitor.
Nice.
And in fact, he did. It was like I went in there. I did not want to go in there. I was in there with a bunch of named gladiators, and I had a weedy little starter gladiator, and that's all I had. I had not been playing a gladiator game. I had been playing which was weird because I had Batiatus, but I was playing more of a concealed traitorous kind of just building my stuff up in the background kind of game, and. Yeah, and so I had one good shot in, and I got it in on the traitorous guy on the other team, and he was like, "Whoa, they hurt me. Okay, I'm going to quit." And skip sides, and all of a sudden it went from 2-2 to 3-1, and that ended very, very quickly. It was awesome. We had a blast. There's a lot more cards in the expansion that are not screw your neighbor cards. They're actually help yourself cards. So it kind of felt like it changed the balance of the deck somewhat. So it wasn't cutthroat, mess everybody else up right out of the gate. It was kind of like, oh, I can actually help myself a little bit. And we really only had a couple skirmishes where people went at each other in the intrigue phase. It felt like the exact same game, but a very different flavor. It was very, very cool. I loved it. In the last round, we had 3 of the 6 of us all got to 12 influence all in the same round, which results in you break ties in the arena.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, because I was Badiatus, I had gotten to 12 by turning in my last 3 gladiators. So I had no gladiator, so I had to send a slave into the arena to defend my house.
How'd that work for you?
It did not work out well. Not work out well at all. But it was a blast. I had an absolute blast. Loved it. Well worth the money. Very cool. My only complaint is that you can't store it all in the original box. So
the curse of the expansion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it.
So where'd you play all those games, Craig?
Well, Russ, it's funny you should ask. I played all of those games at Myriad Games in Manchester.
Nice.
Which is not to be confused with Myriad Games Salem or Myriad Games Long Island.
That's right. The new Staten Island store is there. If you're in that area, check it out. Ted, what have you been modeling? Are you doing any modeling lately?
I've been pretty busy with the Rivet Wars stuff, as nice. I keep saying. So I've been doing a lot of like 3D modeling stuff and working on the aircraft. So
nice. Now we normally talk about modeling here. We're talking about like assembling a pre-bought kit and then painting it. You're talking about actually modeling it in 3 dimensions on a PC.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys brought up the topic, I was thinking like, I'm not actually putting together any miniatures or anything. I'm actually working on a 172 scale model kit now of a tank, but most of my time's just been doing the airplanes and stuff like that. But it's been really cool, like researching World War I aircraft and talking about those, and I've been posting them on the forums and stuff like that, and just discussing the technology there and kind of like what's going on. And
now, do you guys know how many different sculpts you're going to have per side? Is it going to be 1 plane per side or 2 planes? You haven't figured that all out yet?
Yeah, it's all figured out. There's going to be a fighter for each side, a bomber, a scout, and then a hero airplane.
Oh, nice.
And then there's also going to be anti-aircraft, like a flat gun for each one, but they're mobile. So that's been fun working on those kinds of things and designing those out. Like one of the guys in the forums was asking me, he noticed when I was doing it's kind of like the Red Baron, like a light version of the Red Baron, and he was saying that the way I put the guns, they would shoot through the propeller and destroy the propeller. And
but they really did that though.
What's that?
They really did that though.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I was like, no, they had that technology in World War I. It's called an interrupter, and so I went and like researched it because I wanted to send him links to show how it worked, because I didn't really know exactly how it worked. And I found this great YouTube video of how there's like a cam on the actual engine shaft, and as it rotates, the cam when the high point reaches its high point, it's when the propeller is parallel or like flat, so the gun can fire. So when that high point comes, it kind of pushes a rod up, which allows the machine gun to fire when the propeller's in a certain position. So it's only going to shoot when the propeller's, on either side of the machine gun. It's really really simple kind of thing, but pretty ingenious.
Yeah, really clever. Yeah.
So guys were getting into that on the forum, like, oh, this is neat, learning about this kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I love the reality in a game where everybody's a rivet. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like like the vehicles and stuff like that. I have a lot of fun like researching them, and I'm really into like military technology and stuff like that in the history. And so I want it to look like it really would work, sort of, or might work, even if some of it's like fantastical.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I can't wait to see those. That's fantastic. So, Craig, how about you? Any modeling?
No, sadly, no. How about you, Russ? You been doing any modeling?
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, I finally finished my battle engine. Got the base all done. My Storm Strider is completely done. Painted, made a little comic book for him, and then I sent him off to battle. Really happy with him. Very intimidating, so it was great to get him finished. And now I'm starting assembly of my Blazers. So the Blazers are the new light cav unit for Signar. They are basically gun mages on horses, which just is an awesome idea. So I got those, but I'm going to get distracted by those because I picked up this week adding shopping to my modeling category. I picked up the Colossal for Signar, the Storm Wall.
Yes.
I want to build him. And our friend Luke gave me a bunch of Kador bits. So I got a bunch of broken little Kador bits. I'm going to sprinkle along the Colossal base to give him that just stomped one of Rafe's Warjacks feel. That's the goal there. So getting a little modeling done. I'm really enjoying getting back into it and building my stuff, and it makes it easier that my daughter also models her circle stuff, so I can sit with her and do some modeling on a Sunday morning or whatever, and it's a blast. So having a good time with that.
Cool.
Let's see, what about other stuff? So movies, books. Ted, what have you been doing in that front?
Well, this weekend I got to see the new Superman movie.
Oh,
that was pretty.
What'd you think?
It was cool. When the beginning, the intro scene, like the first scenes are just incredible, and the effects are incredible. And I kind of like the take that I don't want to do any spoilers, but he's kind of like a more dealing with real life situations, like the government and Superman. How would they control him, that kind of stuff. But I felt like there was a lot more like action and like fights, which was cool. But I felt like they kind of did it a little too much. And by the end, I was kind of like, okay, like. It's been 2.5 hours. Like, this is a little long, but I really liked it. I don't want to like be down on it. That was the only thing I thought. Like, I kind of like movies where they have the the big fight scenes, but then there's like a chill moment, and then like they'll have a fight scene. But I felt like there was so many awesome fight scenes. It kind of diluted it, if that makes sense. It just kind of didn't seem as special.
Yeah, I think I had the same reaction. Craig, have you seen Man of Steel yet?
I have not.
So, I the first half, I love the first half of that movie.
Yeah.
I love the whole, because a lot of it kind of reminded me of Thor in that a lot takes place in Asgard. You get to see how cool Asgard is. So much of this takes place on Krypton. And Krypton is such a, the first half's a sci-fi film. It really is.
Totally, yeah.
Which was
and
fantastic.
Krypton, those scenes just blew me away. I was
Krypton
this
was
is so
awesome.
beautiful. Like,
and I even liked Smallville and all that stuff. But I was with you. The end, I had two problems. The end just kept. The fights went forever. They looked. I mean, every scene was awesome, but they went forever. They never really progressed. So as Superman was fighting his foe, it wasn't like it fought forever. But as each thing they did kind of led to the next. It was just like, I'll hit you with a bus. Oh yeah, I'll hit you with an oil truck. Oh yeah, I'll hit you with a building. But it didn't matter. And the finishing moves could have been the opening moves. I kind of thought.
Yeah.
So it was kind of anticlimactic. I thought. But that part aside, the first half was fantastic.
Totally, I would definitely recommend it, but going into it with that kind of like mindset.
Yeah, I liked it, but the second half definitely was a downer. All right, so what else are we doing, Ted?
I picked up a new comic book. I saw my friend recommended this comic book, Sledgehammer 44, and it's by Mike Mignola of Hellboy, and really cool, like World War II kind of thing with a big robot suit guy. So
nice
I was
robots.
like, all right, I'm in. I got to get this. And pretty cool looking, like the art. And because I did comic books, so I'm also into the new 52. I've been following the Justice League, and I like what they're doing with that. Yeah. Been pretty cool.
Awesome.
And game wise, iPhone games I've been playing. I picked up Warhammer Quest.
Oh, me too. I'm loving that. What
Are
do
you
you think?
digging it? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's totally a flashback to the days of Warhammer.
Yeah, and it's just got that fun dungeon crawl kind of feel that like I can just jump into the game and just like, go fight and like kill and find stuff and then, turn it off and then jump back into it later and digging that. Also playing Ace Patrol because I'm on this like flying game kind of kick right now.
Ace Patrol is such a fantastic game. I really was blown away by that.
Totally.
Firaxis did a great job with it. It is basically, Wings of War. Just in a video game format. It's just awesome.
Yeah, but I like how like I was expecting it to be more like I like that every turn you get to change your move.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not like the Wings of War like where you have the the kind of like 3 moves ahead kind of thing.
Right.
But it's definitely I really like the RPG element. Like attaining like getting new moves.
Yep.
You feel like your pilot's getting better and stuff like that. And I have a bunch of friends who work at Firaxis, so they're an awesome group of guys and always put out cool games. So
yeah, they do.
So I was excited to try that. And then I've been playing a lot of the game I'm working on during my day job, which is Leap Day game.
Oh.
And it's kind of like a world building kind of crafting game. And so we're still in beta, but been playing a lot of that, just trying to get the balance right and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Cool.
That's pretty cool. And I guess books. I picked up I'll reread books if I really like them. So I picked up Old Man's War again by I don't know if you guys ever read that by Scalzi.
Yep. I just a while ago. Good stuff.
Yeah, I love the whole like future kind of space soldier kind of thing. You know, almost like a Starship Trooper, you know, kind of thing, like a Heinlein Starship Trooper kind of thing in the future, and
right.
Just dig that. And I was also reading Werner Vinge. I like his stuff, so I was reading A Fire Upon the Deep. I was reading that, and that's a cool kind of. If you're into like really high end like sci-fi kind of stuff, like you know super AIs, kind of you know like taking over the universe and that kind of stuff, and what would you know like light speed kind of travel be like in combat with ships if ships could go faster than the speed of light, what would it really be like as opposed to like, you know, kind of the Star Trek kind of battles, like how would ships fight and that kind of stuff. So I really dig the whole, you know, like thinking about the tactics, what they would be like in those kinds of situations. So that book, Werner Vinge, is like awesome for that kind of stuff. So that's what I've been geeking out on.
What's the book called again?
It's A Fire Upon the Deep.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of weird. There's like two parts to the book. One part is on one part takes place in a future, like a human future out in space. And the other part is on this other planet that's kind of like ruled by there's sort of these dogs that are like dog kind of creatures that work together in packs. And when they're in packs, they kind of form this group intelligence.
Yeah. And
if one of the dogs dies, they can have another dog kind of come into the group, and that'll kind of change the personality of the intelligence. And so that's kind of part of the story, but I more dig the outer space with the space combat, and there's this like giant AI system kind of comes into play and is chasing these guys who might have the way to like bring the AI down. So it's pretty cool.
Sounds cool.
That sounds cool.
Sounds very cool.
Awesome. Craig, how about you?
Well, let's see. Interestingly enough, as I'm writing, I'm getting more and more analog and less digital, and I've got all kinds of note cards and everything. Mm-hmm. And because I'll have an idea in my head, not like, oh, the novel should do this, but more like, oh, crap, I was supposed to do that in a chapter I've written. So I've got to like jot it down, or I forget about it, which happens all the time. So I want to get a nice journal. And I had one, and I know I had one, and I was digging through all my old stuff looking for a nice journal that I could just write my ideas down when I have them. And instead, I found this treasure trove, no idea where it came from, never seen it before in my life. It's a little hardcover pocketbook that looks like it came from like the book club back when I belonged to the science fiction book club, but it was printed after I left the science fiction book club, so the mystery deepens. It's called First Meetings in the Enderverse by Orson Scott Card, and it's 4 novellas, including the original short story Ender's Game is based on. So it was very intriguing. It's a short story about his father and how his father came to America, and then a short story about how his parents met, and then there's the short story that Ender's Game is based on, and then there's a short story based on how he first meets the AI after he's left Earth after the final battle. And they're all awesome. They're all like, they are so good that despite the fact that I've read Ender's Game a million times, I have my awesome dog-eared copy from the actual science fiction book club back when I was in high school. I got it on Audible so I could listen to it again. And I'm listening to it, and it's awesome, and I love it, and it was all because of this First Meetings book. And, of course, I was able to get it on Audible because I joined Audible for the 30-day free trial and never let it lapse.
That's right.
It was so cool.
Go to our website and click the Audible logo on the right-hand side there, and you will get the option to sign up for a free 30-day trial and a free book credit, which you can use for pretty much any audiobook they have, and they have hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. Huge selection of sci-fi, huge selection of fantasy. You name it, they've got it. Go check it out.
Yeah, and deals all the time. There's almost a sale going all the time. It's awesome. So that was awesome. And now I was able to jump into Ender's Game because I just finished listening to David Oliver's Rising Thunder, the latest Honor Harrington book, and I've developed a theory, and someday I'm going to have to talk to somebody about that theory.
You can't tell the theory on the air?
No.
Cannot tell the theory on the air. No.
Oh, dear.
Hey, Craig, have you read the other Ender's book, like the I think it's like Ender's Shadow or something?
I
It's
have.
from Bean's point of view, I think.
Yeah. I can't remember what his was called, but yeah, I loved all the I didn't so much like Speaker for the Dead.
Yeah.
It was okay.
That little side plot was almost to me like it was awesome because it was developing the universe, but the story itself wasn't really intriguing to me. So it's like when you're this is what I've learned. Sit down, children, and I shall lecture. No. That any really good story's got three prongs. It's got the world, the characters, and the story, and you really need all three of them to be really good. And those books had an awesome world and awesome characters, and the story was kind of like, okay. Whereas most of his stuff, like all the Shadow of the Hegemon and the Shadow of like Ender's Shadow and all those, I loved all of those. So,
Well, Speaker for the Dead was really just a long version of the Lorax.
it kind of was.
I speak for the trees have no tongues.
Yeah, if the Lorax was allowed to kill you,
Right.
cut you open and leave you dead so a tree can grow out of your tree.
Exactly right. You are the Truffula. See how that works?
Right? See, that's how it all works.
Right.
But yeah, so that was awesome. And I am still reading Peter Hamilton's The Neutronium Alchemist, and I'm still finding it odd.
Nice.
And it's odd.
It's odd. All right. Well, achievement for oddity.
It is odd. And I don't even know if I like it anymore, which is kind of how I felt about 30% into the first book, The Reality Dysfunction. It's odd. And so I don't know if I can do these books in hard copy are over 1,000 pages each.
Wow.
I don't know if I can do a third 1,000-page book that makes me feel this way 30% into the book.
Wow.
Like literally, I stopped reading it so I could read First Meetings in the Enderverse.
Yeah,
Because I was like, I need a break from
Check,
this.
please.
And it's not like, oh, my brain hurts because it's all technical. It's more like, oh, my brain hurts because I just don't get why. I don't know. But anyway, I love the character. That might be an instance where it's a cool story and cool characters, but the universe is very, very odd.
Oh, there you go.
So anyway, so that's me.
All right. Well, I finally finished Soon I Will Be Invincible.
And how did that go?
Audiobook. I really enjoyed it. You know, when I talked about it last time, I said it was kind of like a novelized version of The Watchmen. I would change it to a novelized version of Dr. Horrible, which is just fun. There's it's campy, it's fun, it's a little bit serious, but it's a great book, and it takes place. Every other chapter is either from the point of view, first person's perspective of the evil supervillain, or is from the point of view of a rookie member of basically the Justice League. So you've got either those things going on, and you're going back and forth between the Justice League trying to figure out what's going on and how to deal with the bad guy, and the bad guy in his nefarious plots, and it's just really fun book. Highly recommend it. If you want to read a book about superheroes that's a little bit different, Soon I'll Be Invincible, I would recommend. A lot of fun.
Cool.
Now I'm back into Dresden. I had taken a break after book 7, but I finally jumped back on the Dresden bandwagon with book 8, which is Proven Guilty. For you Dresden fans out there, this is the book where he builds Little Chicago in his basement.
Yes.
So I'm having fun with that. It's always fun to go back to Dresden. I had to take breaks, though, because they are so... I don't want to use the word formulaic because that's not really right, but the pattern's sort of similar in a lot of his books, so I kind of have to take a break from Dresden every once in a while. But I love it. When I come back after a while, it's like putting on an old coat that feels really good, or maybe boots or something. I don't know.
Okay.
And then Craig, I'm really reading for reals now. I'm actually reading a book with it's digital, so it's on the iPad, but it's got words on it. It's not listening. Dogs of War: The Devil's Pay is a novella from Skull Island Expedition. So this takes place in the Iron Kingdoms universe, and Skull Island just about a month ago started launching all their various novellas. Now they've actually got 2 novels out as well. I haven't got to yet, but I'm really enjoying it. It's not like the novella is not like super deep, high quality reading, but it's a great way to get into the universe and get your feet wet. So check that out if you want. And I wanted to break a rule for audio here. I want to read an excerpt from a book.
Uh-oh.
So Nicole got this book to review. And I wanted to read this to you because I think it's hilarious. The title of the book is William Shakespeare's Star Wars.
I have that on my wish list.
And this particular volume is titled Verily a New Hope. So I wanted to read this a little bit from the scene. So this is the scene where, and it's the inside is written with stage direction and everything, just like a Shakespeare play, right? And this is the scene where Luke and the droids and Obi-Wan are in Obi-Wan's hut. And Luke is explaining to Obi-Wan why he's there. And so Obi-Wan is asked, like, why are you here? And Luke says, yet he claims to belongeth to a man named Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I thought, perchance the man was some relative of yours. Maybe dost thou know any by such a name? And Obi-Wan, with the direction aside, oh, how the heart inside me breaks to hear that name once it's called so long ago. But happy fate, 'tis Luke's voice that calls. To Luke, I, Obi-Wan Kenobi, aside, oh, the name is like a song, yet whether glorious song, joy, or else some dirge of bitter pain, yet I'm unsure. To Luke, it is a name I have not heard for so long, these many years, a long, long time ago. And then Luke says, my uncle knoweth Obi-Wan, I ken. He doth report the man dead. Obi-Wan an aside, oh, Owen, wretched knave, such base deceit, yet I know full well that why you spoketh thus. Should I have acted differently in thy place? To Luke, but nay, the man does not in his final sleep yet rest. So that's just an excerpt from Star Wars: A New Hope, as if William Shakespeare had written it. So there you go. I am no Shakespearean actor, as you can tell, but there you have it.
And how does Nicole feel about it?
She hasn't even looked at it yet, so she's probably upset that I've just read it before her, actually. So there you go. And that's last little couple little notes. On the iPad, I've been publishing little comic battle reports and things. And I'm putting them up. People are asking me what I'm using for an app for that. It is Halftone 2. Halftone 2 I'm using for that. And also I'm playing XCOM on the iPad. If you like turn-based strategy games, and for whatever reason you did not buy it on the PC or you want it portable, get it on your iPad. XCOM is fantastic. This is the full version that just came out last fall on the computer. It's pretty much shot for shot the same game on the iPad. And it plays great with the touch interface. Highly recommend it. XCOM. You won't be sorry.
Awesome game.
Woo. Yeah, it is. And is that achievements?
I do believe that was achievements.
All right.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, welcome back. And now I would like to take a moment to talk about Battle Foam.
Battlefoam.com.
Yeah, that's clearly it is the best way to get your stuff from A to Z, or from here to there, or from point A to point B. But a couple of the other things that they have going right now is, of course, DualCon, which is a gaming convention in September. And that's the big plan right now. Everybody's talking about DualCon, planning for DualCon, and I may actually be at DualCon.
Wow, nice, Craig. Excellent.
Yeah, that's going to be the big launching event for Wild West Exodus, of course, from the sister company Outlaw Miniatures. And hopefully there's going to be a lot of the creative team is going to be there. Mm-hmm. But that's in September. Right now, we're talking about Battle Foam and all of these bags, and we're talking about custom foam. My personal favorite thing is and always has been the foam tray creator.
Yeah. Oh, by far. And, Craig, I don't know if you heard this story, but one of our local gamer friends, and I will not mention his name to protect the innocent here, but poor guy, avid War Machine player, helps run the leagues around here. Great guy. He was going down to play at a store, and he got rear-ended. Ooh. And he doesn't have Battle Foam. He carries all of his stuff in just trays in his car, which works great until you get hit and everything gets jostled and knocked over, and you're spending the rest of the day, instead of playing games, putting your models back together and trying to hope things aren't scratched too badly. And the very first thing he posted was, I guess it's time to get Battle Foam. So when you get your Battle Foam, get it before the accident happens, not after the accident. Don't be that guy and be all upset, because you put a lot of time in these models, and that's what saves you. You're gonna be so much happier when you realize. I mean, yeah, they have the stuff that can be hit by an airplane. They had the black label stuff that's indestructible. But if you don't want to go that far, that's fine. Even just having a nice foam bag with a good foam that really can't be hurt. I carry my Colossal around, or my battle engine around in the one square brick of foam, and I don't have room in my bag right now. I just have the big brick of foam, and the foam's so sturdy I can hold it by a couple fingers. It doesn't rip apart. It doesn't break. Great. I can drop it. I believe Ian was wearing it as a hat last Tuesday night. I'm not making that up. And I wasn't even worried that he was wearing it as a hat and dropping it on the floor because the thing's indestructible. Yep. It's great. So I love it.
And of course, they've got new colors and everything. The new Pack 720 is coming in blue
bright
and
red and blue. Be that guy. Be like, bam, that's right. I'm wearing bright fluorescent red. What are you going to do about it? You're going to die to my army.
Any viewer of the Shark Tank knows you need multiple colors to get some depth to your product.
Exactly right. So head over to battlefoam.com. Make sure your army's protected so you're doing more gaming and let's putting things back together.
There you go.
And now, what's in the news? With the shout-out, go to Board Game Geek for new fan-made monsters and event cards for the Godzilla Kaiju World Wars board game. Tokyo ain't gonna stop itself. Oh, good timing with Pacific Rim. Have you seen this film yet? You gotta go see it. And now, the news. First, don't have a lot of stories today, but those we do have are kind of juicy. Let's check them out. Up first here today, Wakeland asked me to remind you, please do, about the upcoming D6 Generation event at Gen Con this year, only a scant month away from the time of this recording. Yes, even less than 30 days, I think. The D6G event, Play by Mob. Join in and join all the fun. It's one of the few places you can be guaranteed at Gen Con to see both Craig, Russ, and Nicole all in one spot. Occasionally, Engelsteins are also spotted there as well, if you're interested in some of their game designs. And there'll be some kind of Play by Mob event. They'll be recording a live-action rapid fire, as well as a live-action achievements, as well as some sort of Play by Mob wacky event. There are 7 tickets remaining for this 100-seat event. But if you don't get one of the last 7 tickets, I recommend you go get one now. You can still show up at the door. There'll probably be room. Someone always no-shows. And it's noon on Friday. Hope to see you there. And now more real news, Wakeland. No more of your injection stuff here. The War Machine Tactics Kickstarter is now well underway. And when I say well underway, well, it's been underway now for 5 days. And in those 5 days, its original goal of $550,000, it's right, $500,000 has already been more than, well, it's been blown away, let's be quite honest. They are now at $785,000 and climbing, with over 8,000 backers backing War Machine Tactics. If you have not heard, War Machine Tactics is the new video game coming out from Privateer Press and White Moon Development. This is the game. Originally, they showed it as an adventure game. It is now going to be a tactical combat game a la XCOM, with both asynchronous and direct play, as well as a single-player campaign. And the stretch goals have now blown through to include 4 playable factions to start on day 1, which is all 4 of the core War Machine factions: Krix, Signar, Kador, and the Protectorate. The expansion is also included now. The Kickstarter, the goals, have also now included Army Painter, so you can paint your jacks and your characters to look like you want. A coloring system. A bunch of mercenaries, including Iris, Boomhowler, Balak, and Gorman DeWolf, among others, are in there. Future stretch goals are looking viable with still 25 days left, including such awesome things as the War Castles from Apotheosis, the War Jacks from Apotheosis, a Dark Sedition campaign, which tells the story of Denegra and Haley, not to mention farther goals, including Retribution and maybe even Crisis, Convergence of Chris. So who can say what's going to happen with this? A lot of huge excitement in the War Machine community around this game. Matt Wilson posting some great posts on it as well. So don't miss on that action if you are interested in War Machine or tactical computer games. In other news, Days of Wonder has announced a new board game coming out. This is always a big deal. Days of Wonder does not release many new games, and every new game is usually very high caliber and high quality. Now they've announced Relic Runners, and if I may be so bold as to read their press announcement, in Relic Runners, you are a fearless explorer traveling in the jungle in search for lost temples full of forgotten treasure and relics. Armed with nothing more than your trusty pith helmet, that is a pith helmet, and a nose for rare antiquities, you'll explore temple ruins and shrines and undertake expeditions in a race for the most treasure. Looks really interesting. A lot of great components, as would be expected from a Days of Wonder title. So take a look at this. Head over to the website. Check that out. Coming out in September 2013. Maybe we'll get lucky and see it at Gen Con. I don't know, but September's not that far away. And finally, Fantasy Flight has announced Bloodbound. This looks pretty exciting. Bloodbound is a card game for high player count. 6 to 12 players being built as a social game involving vampires. Bloodbound is this game of deduction, bluffing, and betrayal for 6 to 12 players. Each player belongs to one of the 2 rival vampire clans, and fellow clan members must work together to capture the opposing clan's leader. The catch: identities are hidden at the start of the game, distinguishing ally and enemy alike. By attacking other players and forcing them to reveal information about the identity, players must distinguish friend from foe and root out the rival leader. Sounds interesting. Sounds like one of those werewolf slash, werewolf games, I guess. But it'd be interesting to see how good it is. We'll hope to see that at Gen Con as well. And that's what's in the news. Time to talk about our friends at Conquistador Games. Very thrilled to have them as a sponsor. We thank them very much for supporting the show. And, they support our podcast, so they've asked us to support theirs, and nothing wrong with that. The guys at CQ Games over there at Conquistador have got a podcast now called The Game Design Roundtable. And it has great stars on there, folks who were involved in Civilization 5. For example, Dirk Kenmire, who also has his own computer game company now. Colby Dow's been on the show. Fred Hicks been on the show. A bunch of guys from Telltale Games. Just all kinds of great people on the show. If you want to check out all kinds of great aspects of gaming in general and deep mechanic conversations by designers, for designers, and just listeners who are curious about that, head on over to cqgames.com and check out their podcast, The Game Design Roundtable. Thanks again for the support, guys.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Well, welcome back. And now, since we have Ted here on the show, and thanks again, Ted. Appreciate it.
And we do have him here.
We do.
Up in a chair and cannot leave.
Right. We wanted to ask you, Ted, first of all, we want to get to know a little bit more about you and your how you got into this whole situation. And then, of course, how Rivet Wars came to be. So we have to ask this question. We ask it of all of our guests, and you've already been through Achievements of Gaming. It's a little bit redundant, but we're going to do it anyway. Are you now, or have you ever been a gamer?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a gamer. I think I have been my whole life since I was a kid. And
what were some of the early games that kind of got you in there?
I think like growing up, I'm 42, so I grew up in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So I remember getting D&D when I was in grade school.
Yeah,
and getting the red and the blue box, or the box with the red and the blue version, and just playing that with my friends and being really intrigued by just the art in it, and just playing that game with my friends. And what was cool was our town had a little D&D club at the community center. So after school, I forget what day it was, or twice a week or something, we'd all put on our backpacks and walk to the community center, and they'd have a high school kid who would be our dungeon master. And
awesome.
That was just so cool, because he would, he'd help us create our characters, and he wouldn't let us see the map. He would draw out the map as we saw it, as the characters, and it was just really fun. So that totally got me into gaming.
Nice. Now, over the years, were you mostly in RPGs, or did you get into what other kind of games have you played?
I think Warhammer was a big thing for me when I got into high school. I'm mostly an artist. I think I've always been more on the art side. So with our little D&D club, I used to be the one who would always draw the characters.
Oh, cool. So were you that guy? Be like, okay, I'm an elf. I'm about 5'3", and I've got a long sword, and you do the character for me?
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think kids used to give me a nickel or a dime to draw their dudes.
I'm sending you an email now for my current NPC in Iron Kingdom. So I'm just gonna. Okay.
Yeah, but that was my role, kind of doing the drawings and stuff. And
nice.
But when I got to high school, I really we had this store in the local mall called the Game Room, and it was just full of it'd sell pool tables and stuff like that, dartboards and things like that. But they also had a huge selection of board games, and they had a wall covered with Warhammer stuff. And the first time I saw it, I didn't know what it was, but there was something about it. I think it was the orcs that I really dug, their look and stuff like that. And so I just would buy their stuff. I have the old Rogue Trader. I still have the original Rogue Trader, and I just didn't know anyone who played it or anything about the game, but just loved going through the book and reading about the Emperor and the whole backstory and all that. And I used to buy buy Marines and just paint them up and do the best I could. So
nice.
So that was really cool. I mean, I've always been a fan of Warhammer.
Now, did that transfer to other miniature games, or was it pretty much Warhammer? And then, like, what kind of games are you playing today?
Well, it kind of more worked into video games because, yeah, that's what I do. That's my day job, is actually working in video games. And so I've always been more on the art side, like with Warhammer and other games like that. I've always been attracted to the art and doing the artwork. And so so video games were kind of neat because I didn't have to focus as much on the rules and worrying about that, where the game would kind of take care of that for you. So I kind of transitioned into doing that, but always kept doing like the Warhammer kind of stuff. And back in the day, I really liked, you know, like BattleTech was a big thing for me, like Star Frontiers, that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
And more recently, like I like Descent 2. I picked that up. That's a pretty cool game.
Yeah, it is. Nice.
So those kinds of games.
And you mentioned both art and video games. So let me ask you this: how do you consider yourself first and foremost an artist? Is that sort of your day job?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to college for the way I got into doing art was I played games through high school, and then my mom's like, you got to get serious, like get a real job kind of thing. So I went into architecture and got my degree in architecture. But then when I graduated, it was kind of around the time when CG was kind of really becoming big. Like people were starting to use AutoCAD and stuff like that. And instead of doing buildings on that, I just wanted to do like all kinds of things like spaceships and just, like monsters and things like that. Right. And so my friend ended up seeing an ad for computer artist jobs. And he told me I should apply. And I sent in some stuff and got a job doing that. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 15, 20 years.
Nice. Now
just working in the video game industry.
And it's all video game industry stuff? So any games anybody might have heard of?
Yeah. The big company I worked at was Big Huge Games.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I started there in 2001, right when they started up. So I worked on Rise of Nations.
Oh, nice.
Rise of Legends.
Yeah.
Worked on an expansion for Age of Empires. And then we went on to do Amalur.
Yeah.
Reckoning. And so those games, the RTSs definitely influenced Rivet Wars, and was kind of like something I really dug because I liked like Civilization and stuff like that, but then having the real time strategy aspect and seeing all your guys moving around, I mean, it was kind of like the culmination of like what I'd always wanted to see, which was your little Warhammer guys or your toy soldiers as a kid, but seeing them actually get to move around and fight out, after you've set them up is a pretty cool thing. Getting to work on a project like that was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. It must be fun to draw a concept art and then all of a sudden see them animate and come to life and fight and things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really neat, and it's neat to work with. I think what doing that for so long taught me is just like working with a big team, and just like knowing that if you work with a lot of people with like different strengths and they all bring something to the table, you can really make some like awesome stuff. So those games were really fun to work on and definitely influenced like where I want to do or what I want to do with Rivet Wars and stuff like that.
Oh, very cool. I'm always curious, do you get a lot of direction on what you draw, or do they kind of just give you a high level idea in the video game? Like we need a god who's 10 feet tall and has a pointy hat, and you just go at it. Or, do you have a lot of room to kind of be creative, or is it very specific?
I guess it depends. It depends on who you're working with, or what the project is, or how long you've worked with them. The person. Usually, like with the Rise of Nation games, that was real historical. Mm-hmm. So there we tried to stay real strictly to, this is what this flak gun should look like, or this tiger tank, or something like that. But then with when you do more fantasy thing, I think it's like there's a lot more interpretation. Mm-hmm. And it kind of depends what your role is. If you're the concept artist, you kind of come up with the concept, and then whether you have to, when you do the 3D model of that, have to be real strict and, make sure it like looks exactly like the concept. That's kind of up to, I guess, like the art director and the team you're working with.
Oh, so, cool. Now, are you more of the concept guy or the sort of the guy that draws the actual things, or do you do a bit of both, or what has your role been in all this?
Well, at Big Huge, I went from just doing, I started working there and was kind of doing like some concept drawings. And then they found out that I had a degree in architecture. So I became like the building guy, like the guy who like designed all the architecture and stuff like that. But it was really great. It was really cool. And it was fun to research that kind of stuff and, to design castles and get into like designing these historical buildings. Right now, I don't I don't work at Big Huge anymore. I'm working with a bunch of guys who used to work there. And we're doing more like casual games kind of stuff, like for the web and for mobile games.
Oh, cool.
And really, I'm the only artist at the company I'm at now, which is Sparky Pants Studios. And it's kind of neat because I get to do everything, being the only artist. So it's pretty cool.
Well, that's exciting. So basically a startup or a small company doing its thing?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, like a startup. Like
cool.
it's 2.5 years old or so. And just like a bunch of some programmers who I used to work with and myself are just working on some games with guys all around the country. And because of Skype and things like that, it's really neat because like I'm in New Jersey, some of them are in Maryland, some are in Oregon and Seattle. So it's really a neat kind of thing.
That's awesome. And you can't get much more indispensable than being the only guy in the company.
That's a good call. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like, if you want your art, you got to come to me and,
that's
like they
dirty right there.
Totally. And they joke about it, like, got to be nice to Ted or the game's not going to look good, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's cool. But it is definitely, too, like a lot of pressure because it's like, oh, what is the game not looking good? Ted's not pulling his weight. He's going to get on there. So
now,
it's fun.
Have you ever slid like friends' faces into games?
Oh, like Easter eggs and stuff like that?
But like more personal ones, like only like your buddy Joe would know that was his head that just flew across the screen.
I've never done anything like that because I think when I had the opportunity to do stuff like that, it was just there was a lot of like, these were some pretty big games and there was a lot of money on the line and you just wouldn't want to risk that kind of thing. I think like earlier in video games when they were smaller, you could kind of get away with that kind of stuff. But I think like, it's just too risky. You don't want to mess up something like that,
It's always frowned upon and looked upon as unprofessional, but the temptation is always there to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we definitely would trace ourselves. Like I know my thumb is used for the thumbs up somewhere in Rise of Nations. And, but it was always with approval and stuff. And actually in Rise of Nations at the end over the credits, me and my friend, we wrote a song and I performed it. Like I sang it and he played guitar. And it plays over the credits when you get to the end of the game. So that was kind of fun. But we had to sign off the rights to the music to Microsoft because they were the publisher, like saying like, yes, you have the rights to this, music and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's cool. I have a copy of Rise of Nations. I got to go listen to the credits again now. That's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, check it out. It's pretty
I like
fun.
that game.
It's
That's
goofy, but it's fun.
Well, very cool. So now, of course, you were involved with Rivet Wars. And so can I tell us what happened? How did the whole idea of Rivet Wars start as a concept?
Yeah, I mean, it really came about organically. Like, it was when before I'd started doing this startup kind of thing, I was working freelance, and I was kind of just trying to figure out like what I want to do. So I was hitting a lot of websites, and I went to this one website where people were doing a lot of customization of toys and miniatures and things like that called Toy Break. And they had a contest for, draw a character and we'll make this into like this miniature. Kind of like, do you remember those muscle toys? Like the little like rubber kind of like skin colored guys? Yeah. Yeah, so they were going to make like an homage kind of toy to that. And they were like, hey, just draw a picture, put it in the forum, and we're going to pick. And so like hundreds of people did drawings. And I did a drawing of a little tank. And it didn't get picked, but a lot of people really dug it and gave me good feedback on it. And they're like, you should make that into a toy. You should, make it into a miniature or something like that. And so I went about looking into like how I could do that. And luckily right about that time, 3D printing was kind of becoming like more popular and getting cheaper.
Now, what year was
quality was getting better.
What year was this, Ted, about? Just people get an idea.
I guess around 2010, 2009. So like just 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And so I got a 3D print of it, which was kind of expensive at the time, but I was like, this is awesome because being a 3D artist, I've worked in the computer, making 3D models of my stuff, looking at it move around, but never like holding it like a sculptor can.
Yeah, that's great.
And it really made me appreciate like this is really cool being able to hold it. So I realized that there's no way I'm going to be able to like 3D print additional copies because the first print was like hundreds of dollars, like $200 maybe.
Right.
And so I looked into, can I make silicone molds and then start doing that? So I made my own setup of like mold making, started pouring resin copies of them and selling it online. And people were just like, hey, this is cool. Can I order it and stuff? And I was like, I was like, yeah, I'll start selling these. And I thought maybe I'd sell like 2 or 3 of them, or be kind of like a fun little side project. And then I started getting orders to like 20 or 30 and 40, and then stores were asking me like, hey, we want to carry your stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't really make that much of it. You can't really carry it.
Now, did you still only have one tank, or you started making other rivet concepts?
Well, I started doing the tank, and people were like, that's really cool. Yeah. But then I've always been into like world building, really interested in me. I mean, like looking back at like Warhammer, that was one of the things I loved about it was the story. I liked reading the novels, and whenever a new character would come out in White Dwarf, I just want to read I'd love reading the story about the guy who they're talking about in the game. And so I wanted to be like, well, what is this tank? Like, who built it? Why does it look the way it does and stuff like that? And so I started kind of developing the background story, and then I wanted to build a driver for it. So I built the first Rivet guy and started selling copies of him. Yeah. And that was around the time when Cool Mini contacted me, asking me if they could carry this stuff.
Wow, so they reached out to you.
Yeah, nice. David Dowse, who's one of the owners of the company, just contacted me. Was like, hey, we want to carry your stuff. And I'm like, I make maybe 5 of these a month. I can't really, provide you with like quantities that would be worth selling. And so he and I started talking. He's like a really cool guy, and we started talking. He's like, well, I really like the vision, what you've got, the website, the backstory you've started to create. What about, we're like a publisher. What if we, took care of the manufacturing, the marketing and kind of stuff, and you designed the game around these miniatures, these little figures you're making? Wow. I was like, that sounds awesome. Like, yeah, let's do it. Like, that totally sounds great. But at the same time, I was a little intimidated because I'd never worked with like manufacturing, and to being more on the art side of games, and video games, I wasn't that, sure if I could do a board game kind of project.
I was going to ask you, had you designed a game before, or are you just like, yeah, I'll do that, and then thinking to yourself, holy crap, I'm about to design a board game?
I think that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, wow, am I going to do this? But David was really cool. He's like, no, you're smart, and like, I can tell, you know what you're doing and stuff. So we talked about the game design and the vision for it. And Rivet Wars was really like a World War I kind of feeling game. And we talked a lot about like what World War I is about, and kind of that idea of like blowing a whistle and all the guys kind of running out of the trench, and just, these like horrible, like really huge amounts of attrition and people dying and stuff like that. And trying to capture that kind of feel of like losing a lot of your men, kind of sending them into battle. So that really set the tone for like the sort of game we wanted to make, and that like I felt we should make. And I think that's where I like to start, is sort of like a vision for like a feel you want the game to have, and kind of try to pursue that through the mechanics. So looking at the my experience with RTS too, we were kind of talked about like, let's take some ideas from video games and try to put those into the board games. And so I contacted my one friend, Bill Pedergel, who I'd worked with a lot, and he was also an artist. But we always used to talk about like game design, and we used to play like Space Hulk together and different board games. He liked Warhammer too, and but we also worked on at Big Huge for like 8 or 10 years. So we kind of mulled over the ideas, and he helped me a lot with like figuring out what we wanted to do and like play testing. And so that's where the idea of like having the game be, instead of like a Warhammer kind of game where you build your army based on points, it was like, what about the idea you just throw down your board, with your friend, come over to your friend's house, throw down the board, and each turn you get so many points, and you spend that, and you deploy your units in deployment zones, and then get to move them and fight with them, and then next turn you get so many deployment points. So it's kind of more like a real-time strategy game.
Right, you're spawning guys.
Exactly, you're spawning guys. It's based on these resources of deployment points, but also rivets, and different costs for different units. So every turn is kind of a tactical decision of like, what am I going to deploy against what he's deploying. And so we kind of wanted that RTS feel of like, oh wait, his heavy horsemen are coming, I got to build more heavy foot soldiers and less archers, that kind of thing.
Nice. That sounds pretty awesome. And of course, so you kind of had the idea. Did you have how much art did you have at this time for different unit concepts? Were you still sort of building that out too, or did you kind of have that underway?
That kind of came about. I guess really, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. All I had at that point was this vertical tank, what I called the vert tank, and then an infantryman for the Allied side, and then I built a spider tank, like a big walking tank for the bad guys. Which
did that become the Axis main?
Sorry,
tank?
they're not the Blad guys. The Blight.
Say.
Yeah, it's wrong. I keep totally think of them as the bad guys, but yeah, they're just a different faction. So they're not good or bad. They've got their their own motivations for fighting and stuff like that. So. Who am I to judge them? But
there's no good, there's no bad. There's just you and me, and rivets just have to disagree.
Exactly. So I just had those 3 units, but that was kind of good, I think, in a way, because when developing the game, it was wide open to do whatever I thought would fit, the need of it. So we kind of hit on, kind of looking back at the RTS idea of like, okay, we want infantry, we want cavalry, and those two are going to oppose each other. We started out with kind of like a rock, paper, scissors kind of idea that the Allied infantry is really good against infantry units. So the Blight infantry would be susceptible to those. But the Blight infantry is really good against the Allied cavalry. And the Allied cavalry is really good against other cavalry. And the Blight cavalry is really good against infantry. So we kind of got a cross kind of anti-unit thing going with just those base units, and then added on top of that some hero stuff and also the tanks. Nice. And so that was kind of the framework we built on. And then I just kind of started sketching those units in a way that I thought like looked cool and kind of felt, matched up with the World War I kind of aesthetic and the steampunk kind of feel.
Well, that's really cool. Now, when did I want to ask you this too, because I think it'll give us some context when some of this other stuff comes along. How long does it take you typically to come up with a new, rivet concept? Is it a day? Is it a week? Or how long do you spend on one guy? Like
it's totally like how much time I have. Yeah. Because like sometimes you wake up and you're just like, wow, I've got this idea for this really cool unit, but there's no way that's going to fit into the mechanics of the game. And what are we going to do for that? Like an example of that was like the last day of the Kickstarter for Rivet Wars. We really wanted to do like one final thing. A lot of people have been asking like, what are the heavy tanks? Because Rivet Wars has 5 armor types. And so the units that we've been talking about just covered the first 3. Because I hadn't really thought of like what units would be in these higher armor classes. And they were like, come on, you got to have something. So that morning I just like took a shower, and I find the shower is like the best place to like concentrate on new ideas, and was just like, okay, I'm going to come up with a tank for the Blight and the Allies that is like this heavier armor type. And then just like kind of gelled these ideas in my head, sat down, and really, I think in like 2 hours or so, just like I'll do like a 3D model of the vehicle, like real low polygon, not a lot of detail, and then print that out and then draw over that to add the detail and kind of work out everything else, and then scan that back into the computer and color it. And so those two probably took about like 2 hours or so. So sometimes I can, if I really am in a rush, I'll try to blow the stuff out. But sometimes it's better to, like take a day or so just to really spend some time on it.
Nice. So, well, you mentioned Kickstarter, and of course, everybody who's followed along the whole Rivet Wars thing knows that it was a great Kickstarter effort. When did Kickstarter enter the picture? Was that something from the get-go when you talked to Cool Mini? It was like, yeah, we're going to do this as Kickstarter, or was it something that came along later, or how did that work out?
No, it wasn't really. I mean, if you think like 2 or 3 years ago, like Kickstarter, I didn't really know much about it, or I don't even know if it was around. And when I first started talking to Simon, it was about like when they were doing Super Dungeon Explorer.
Right.
And Super Dungeon Explorer wasn't even done yet or out yet. So, it was kind of like we were just going to do it like the traditional way. Right. Probably roll out like the core box with the core units and then see how that did. And then hopefully that would do well. And then, we would want to do expansions and, eventually more factions and stuff. But as time went by, we just saw such success with Kickstarter, and Cool Mini was just having some great success with it. Right. So I think, Rivet Wars was just in the right place at the right time to get on Kickstarter, and the project was ready to go. So, it just worked out really well.
So when you started looking at the Kickstarter thing, did you guys do a lot of planning and prep before then? Did you have a lot of the stretch goals figured out before you started? Was it sort of on the fly? I mean, how did you guys prep before you went live for this?
There was definitely some prep. I don't know how much I should say because there's stuff like we couldn't do that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't want like people who are in the Kickstarter like to think like, oh, that would have been awesome if it only gone a little farther kind of thing. But like plans changed. Like definitely things switched up. I mean, I guess I'll tell you guys like we were originally thinking like, hey, let's do maybe we should roll out like 4 factions.
Yeah.
Not just the Blight and Allies. But then as we got feedback and looked at the way people were reacting to stuff, they wanted kind of more variety of units in the Allies and Blight. So we were like, well, let's keep going down that road. And so I was like going crazy, like trying to sketch up new units for the Ally and Blight because I had these other factions kind of planned out. And so it really took like a 180 or at least a 90-degree turn. And it was really like a crazy kind of month, like being on the Kickstarter. And then like talking with David and Chern over at CMON, they were like, what else do we want to do? And I'm like, airplanes. Like, I'd love to do aircraft. And so that was great. I was so happy we made that stretch goal. That just like, I mean, the whole thing like blew me away. But being able to do the airplanes and the ground units to me was just like awesome. And then getting to do the heavy tanks at the end was really cool too. But those all came up during the Kickstarter. A lot of the heroes and stuff like that came about during the Kickstarter. So it was definitely an organic kind of crazy process. And going into it, David told me he's like, man, you'll never forget this month, and he was totally right. Like it was like the craziest month of my life, but really fun and really exciting. This is cool.
Yeah. So what did you think when? I mean, it did really, really well. It hit $582,000, which was a huge number, and your starting goal was $25K. Did you? I mean, going into it, what did you think? Did you have any idea? Was that expectation in that ballpark? What did you think you were going to do with this?
I don't know. I think David at Cool Mini had a lot of confidence in like the product and thought it would do well. And myself, I had no idea. I mean, I was like, dude, this is like, I'm not like a well-known game designer. Not this, it's a new IP, all these kind of questions, like how would people, receive it and stuff like that. But I had a decent fan base of people who were like really interested in it. And I think it had a good track record of development where people saw that it kind of had that kind of grassroots, like grew out of like an idea, and that a lot of people got passionate about it because I think I was passionate about it and they were into it. And I think that helped. So, I kind of was hoping that it would do well, but I really didn't know. I mean, I really wasn't sure. And then the first day it went crazy, and I was just like bouncing off the walls and stuff. I was really excited. It's really cool.
Nice. So it goes through. It has a great, fantastic month. You're going like crazy, making all these, creating stretch goals on the fly and focusing on expanding the factions. It finishes. It does really well. It ends. And then how did that feel? Like, were you sort of like, oh crap, I got to make this thing now?
No, that already started, before it ended. Like, it was totally like, oh man, all right, I gotta get moving on this stuff because, I had the core stuff, pretty well planned out, but then all these stretch goals, it's a lot of stuff,
right?
And a lot of miniatures and things like that. And so that kind of kicked in, before it ended. Like I knew, I'd have to like start, setting up. In game development, we're always talking about milestones. And so I just want to do the same kind of thing. Like, I've got to hit these milestones for myself. And I'm really fortunate in that I have a lot of friends who are like great digital artists who I've worked with, at different game companies over the years. And so I called up a bunch of friends and people and contracted them to help me out with doing the miniatures. So that was a huge, huge help. And we blew out most of the stuff pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely like when it ended, I think I took like a day or two of like just like decompress. Nerd. But then it was like, we got to get back on, got to get going.
Yeah. That's great. So you were, and did it consume? I mean, how much of your life did it consume post Kickstarter to get everything all locked down?
It's pretty crazy. I mean, like I was, I was listening to I think Craig, like after the last on the last podcast, you were talking in the last segment about how like you're a writer and stuff like that, and like how you had this great crazy deadline where you had to give up like TV and all that kind of stuff, to do what you want to do, and that was exactly what I've gone through and kind of what I'm doing through. I mean, it's like having a second job now, and really just I just really have to focus on my day job, finish. I have 2 little kids too, and a wife and a family. So, deal with them when they come home, hang out with them. And then after they go to bed and stuff, it's like Rivet Wars time and just getting that stuff done. And another part of that too is just being able to like let go of stuff. Like I've had to, not be the one who's doing everything, like by outsourcing the miniatures, like some of the sculpts, like originally I did all the ones in almost all the sculpts in the core box, but now I'm just like coming to the realization like, okay, I've got to, outsource the stuff, because I don't want the quality to go down if I'm like trying to rush through stuff and things like that. But it's definitely meant like I'm not playing many games or watching TV or anything like that. Like, if I have a spare moment, it's like I got to get this Rivet Wars stuff going, so.
And so you're still working at that fevered pace?
I think it comes, it comes in waves, sort of, like you can't keep it up all the time or you'll just go nuts, like you were talking about in that, like that one thing hit you where you had to like 70 million things do at once. There will be times where I like kind of like relax for like a few days, but then it's like, okay, I've got to get back, into like overdrive mode and keep pumping this stuff out, because I just want this to be like, you want it to be the highest quality. You want all the people who like kickstart, help with the Kickstarter, like they put a lot of trust in me and my project, and I want to make sure that the quality is like as high as possible, and everything's as awesome as I would want it to be. And so I don't want to be looking back like, oh, I'm glad I watched all those episodes of whatever, but like didn't get that thing done. So, it's a bit of sacrifice, but I guess it's you just make those choices. Like, I really want this to happen and come out well. So, just suck it up.
Nice.
Now, did you draw the comic book cover that was part of the Kickstarter front page by any chance?
The one cover is done by this artist, Andre. The cover for the box, the one where there's the big walker and the guy like laying there like he's dead kind of, and then the guy like yelling. Is that the one?
It looks like it's like actually designed like a comic book cover.
Oh, whoa, okay, yeah, that one. That I did with my friend Darren. I did an original cover for the box in 3D that looks like that cover, and they were like, oh, it looks a little too CG. Talking to Simon, so we got that other artist Andre to do a more like painterly kind of look, but we kept that one and took kind of the outline of the 3D, and I gave it to my friend Darren Pepe, who's he's a video game artist too, but has done comic books in the past. And I was like, hey man, let's do a comic book, because a lot of Rivet Wars is just me like kind of wanting to do stuff I've always wanted to do, like a comic book. And I'm like, let's just do a comic book. Like, this will be cool. And Cool Mini was like, all right, yeah, if you do a comic book, we'll make it a stretch goal thing or give it away. So we're going to give it away as a PDF. Oh, and it's only... Sorry.
No, I just said that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's like so neat. I was like, and we're going to do an art book, and I think we're going to be able to put it in there. So that should be really cool. But yeah, it was a chance to do like a comic book with my friend, and I had to contract him to do it. Because I just didn't have the time to really work with him on it. But, like we wrote it and like plotted it out together, and then he did the art and helped with the cover. The cover, I'm glad, did you dig the cover? Do you like how that looks?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah, because that was those old like Sergeant Rock kind of, like comic books with the giant, I think it was like, I've got one of those like 80-page like super giant, like special editions, and we just wanted it to have that kind of feel of like like one of the things with Rivet Wars is it's definitely always wanted that feel of like a G.I. Joe kind of like little green army men kind of Sergeant Rock kind of feel. So that felt like perfect for the cover of the comic.
Yeah, and I love also, if you go to rivetwars.com, you can see all this stuff. I love the comic pages you've got there on the comic section of your site too. That's just really cool.
Yeah, that I did like back at the sort of when like Rivet Wars I was trying to figure out what it was exactly.
Yeah.
And definitely wanted to show like, because I've kind of always been conflicted between the Rivet guys being sort of like cute and stuff, but like that they're at war and like that, so this is a pretty like horrible kind of thing.
Right.
And so just showing some of that like life and like real life situations with the soldiers and stuff like that. But yeah, doing those 2 pages I just did myself, but then for the actual like 8-page comic, like Darren ended up doing the art. So that was kind of the inspiration for like, hey, if I could do these 2 pages, like let's do a full-on comic. So it's definitely fun.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. So you're getting near launch date, I guess. I think the original goal was September of this year.
Yeah.
Is everything still on track, or?
I think so, but right now it's out of my hands.
Yeah.
Like all the miniatures, like I get them 3D printed, and man, it was so scary. I got like all the miniatures 3D printed. I posted a picture of like them all in this one box.
Yeah.
And I had to send it to Hong Kong, and it was like dropping it off at the FedEx office. I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy, like. The only good thing is I guess I could have printed them again, but really didn't want to have to go through that.
Right.
And so yeah, everything's over there with the factory and stuff like that. So hopefully it won't nothing will get slowed down too much or anything like that. But I know it's like a ton of stuff. Like there's a lot of molds that have to get made because of all the parts, and it's pretty intricate. And we ended up like, because of all the stretch goals, it's like the core box, so like the game, and then like 3 expansions are getting made, plus the air expansion and the heavy armor expansion, which are going to ship later.
Right.
So it's kind of like crazy, like how much got done because of the Kickstarter. It's almost like talking to the guys at Cool Mini. It's almost like, like more than a year's worth of product. If we rolled it out like normally, it'd be like, okay, here, this is the core box is out. Let's do a couple expansions, then let's do a couple more. So Kickstarter definitely has kickstarted this like into overdrive, like crazy kickstarted.
That's awesome. Now, given that kind of experience with that, the amount of work, but also the amount of results from it, would you do another Kickstarter like this, or is it sort of like a once in a lifetime? Glad I did it, but that was a lot of work.
Definitely. Sometimes I feel like that.
Yeah.
Like I should just like be like, I did it. Like don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, like, I mean, I have such a passion for like doing this kind of stuff. Like I mean, I was doing it originally, losing money, like doing it, but just doing it because it was fun,
right?
Just to make it. So the idea that like this could grow, one of my ideas was always that I wanted to make a bag of rivets and be able to sell it to people for like really cheap, and just like, just like everybody could have rivets wherever they were, kind of thing.
Right.
And this is really allowed for that. I mean, like there are people who have this stuff that are, all over the world, and it just blows my mind that there are people in like right now who have bought the other rivet miniatures I made before the Kickstarter that, they're in like Germany and Singapore and the Philippines and South America and, Africa and Japan and Germany and just all over the world. And it's just, I don't think I could walk away from this kind of thing at all. Like I want to keep doing it. I want it to grow. I got to do more factions. I mean, come on.
Well, I'm glad you segued there, because now I'm going to ask you the tough question. So, Craig, please dispatch Charlie with the paddles.
Okay.
So Ted, what can you tell us about your future Rivet War plans, if anything? And please tell us something.
Yeah, I'm not big into like keeping secrets. I don't know if that's bad.
No, it's good for us. Good for us.
I've definitely hinted at like I want to do like a Russian kind of faction called the Ruska.
Yeah.
And if you look at the like I have a map already laid out of all of the world, and so the Ruska and the Ottoman Empire are over to the western side of the Blight. So that would be the next expansion I would want to do. Like definitely, just the Russians have so many like interesting aspects to them. And, we've already like mulled over like different, kind of national powers or national sort of nuances that those armies would have. So I'd really love to release another core box that would be like the Russian Ottomans. And then if you already had the Blight and the Allies, you'd have a four faction choice right there,
Nice.
which, I think would just be awesome. And then
Now, would it always be a 2-player game, or would it be a way to make it a multiplayer game? Have you thought about that, or is it too tricky the way to the core mechanics?
No. I mean, you could make it like, you can play it like 4-player now or 6-player if you have enough pieces.
Oh, great.
Like you could totally take your friends. We don't, in the core box, we ended up not having any scenarios for more than 2 players, but it's so easy to just like house rules it. It's very like simple to just set up your, these are my deployment zones. How many deployment points are we going to give each other each turn?
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of round robin through the turns and have at it. And we definitely have a lot of scenarios we want to release online too, to support the community. And that seems to be like a really cool thing now with like digital media and stuff like that. So definitely like multiplayer games, go crazy. I mean, you could theoretically have as many people as you want, but just take forever to play the game. So.
Well, it sounds fantastic. So what is your biggest takeaway from the whole experience, and what is like your life lesson you could teach if someone is going to start their own Kickstarter and you could tell them one bit of advice? What would you give them?
Just go into it with a positive attitude. Be excited. Don't get down. Like sometimes there are definitely like the down days when you're like, no one loves my game. No one wants to do this, and people can get pretty negative and stuff. But, I think like just stay positive. If you love what you're doing and you really dig, your product and you love it, then, and then other people will dig it too. And, just stick with it, stick with your plan, definitely be willing to, make those turns and, like veer here and there, depending on the feedback you get, but really be positive about it and look at the community as a positive thing. Like they're, try to get some feedback from them, get some ideas. And I was very interactive with the community during the Kickstarter. Like I really wanted to talk to people and, give them answers to things and see what they thought. And I think that worked out well. Like it was really fun.
Well, very cool. Well, Ted, thanks for all that insight into Rivet Wars. I kickstarted my copy. I can't wait to get it. So
Kickstarted out of it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you? That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I was right there, buddy. I was right there from like day 2. I was very excited with I love the whole art. I love the concept of this thing. I got to play it at TempleCon with the Cool Mini guys. It was awesome.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It was really fun. I went to the Cool Mini had a convention and down in Atlanta, and it was the first time that I really was like saw the demo game that they'd set up and made up, and got to play with a bunch of people who kickstarted, and it was so fun like talking to them. It was so fun seeing people get the game and then start teaching it to other people, which that just blew me away. Like it, and then too, like the game has like several layers of complexity. So like you can play it without worrying about like the cards and some other different things, but then like people would slowly like add those nuances to their game, and it was really fun to see people get into it and really get behind it and feel excited that they backed it. That was the best feeling, that they weren't like, oh man, I really shouldn't have backed this, so that was a good feeling.
No, it was awesome. All I could think after I saw the physical copy was I can't wait to get it in my hands, and I'm really fingers crossed that you guys get it in time for Gen Con. I think it would be great to see that there and get the feedback too.
Oh, that's what I was like. I was going crazy for to get it to Gen Con. We're definitely going to have a giant diorama there, so that should be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd heard it's going to be a giant dirigible and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, and I just ordered some 3D prints of the I'm working really hard at the air expansion now to get those done. Nice. So I just got some 3D prints of the Blight and the Allied planes and some of the Allied anti-aircraft guns done, so I can send those off to get put in the diorama too. So those will get in.
Oh, I can't wait. That's going to be awesome. Yeah, the Cool Mini or Not booth will be a must-visit place at Gen Con for sure. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ted, for all the details. Really can't wait to see the game. Now, if someone wants to go online and find all the specific latest hotness on Rivet Wars, what's coming next, is rivetwars.com the place to go?
Yeah, rivetswars.com, and there's links there to my Facebook. There's a Rivet Wars Facebook and a Rivet Wars Twitter. if you want to follow the Twitter feed. So those are the 3 best spots, I'd say. I'd say the Facebook is really fun because a lot of people leave comments and there's a lot of interaction there. So any of those 3 is a good place to find out about Rivet Wars.
Great. Well, thanks again, Ted. We appreciate it. And we'll be right back in a little bit with more Ted and more games.
On the other side.
Yeah.
This is the D6 Generation Podcast. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what? Who writes this? That's impossible.
Now it's time to talk about our friends at War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy Magazine.
History wargaming for all of us.
Where miniature history comes alive, the history of little short people, where miniature history comes alive on the pages of this awesome magazine. What I like about this magazine, Craig, I've said it every time, and I'm going to say it again right now because it is the reason I spend time going through each and every page of this magazine, is the fantastic miniature photography they do.
It's awesome.
And if we remember when we had the editor on our show, he was talking about how they had these huge painting drives for each issue because they're always like, oh my God, we're doing samurais. Someone paint another army, right? And they got to paint them all up. And they do a great job. They do a fantastic, I mean, the paint, it's not just like they stop to paint on these things. They look fantastic. They do great paint work, shading. I mean, it's just, as a miniature painter myself, I am always in jaw-dropping awe of the dioramas they pull off in this book.
Yeah, and it's not just the miniatures; it's the terrain that they set up for their games, and it's the photography of the pieces, and it's the fact that every issue is a themed piece of work, basically a book that's focusing on one area of interest. So maybe if you don't have a subscription, maybe you go to Barnes and Noble,
right,
or your local store, and you look for it, and you find the issue that is of an era that interests you. For instance, I love Feudal Japan, which is issue 67 is where we are right now.
Yeah, right.
And I love looking through all of these different themes that we could be looking at, and all of the different battles that they're talking about. And these are they're not game system specific, so they're very vague or very general missions and campaigns and things like this that can be molded and adjusted for your favorite flavor of historical wargaming.
It's fantastic. And so what you want to do is head on over to WSSmagazine.com, and you can check out all their stuff there. You can subscribe. You can buy back issues. But if you do any of those things, make sure you put in the code D6G, and you get a little savings there on your order as well. So head on over to WSS Magazine for all the latest information on our favorite miniature wargame magazine, WSS Magazine, War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy Magazine.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire.
Hello everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out, it's not too early to think about Extra Life. Join Team Cranky or any team you want, so as long as it's Team Cranky, at extralife.org today. I have a guest with me today. Not quite sure how to bill this particular guest, but he's here and we decided to talk about this, so you may have heard from him before. I'd like to welcome Russ Wakeland!
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. Very excited to be here.
We never do a segment together. So we were talking about it and saying we should do a segment together sometime to see if we can survive it and still be married at the end of it and not be ready to kill each other.
Right.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about?
Pacific Rim.
Yes, we went to see Pacific Rim last night, Sunday night, and we're recording this Monday night. And what'd you think?
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Should we do spoilers? Are there any spoilers in this segment?
Okay, if you haven't seen it and you don't want to know anything about it, don't listen.
Right. Just save the spot and come back to it tomorrow.
Right, because, I don't think, we might spoil some stuff. Yeah, fair warning, don't listen if you don't want to be spoiled.
Yeah, they had me at sword. See? As soon as the sword came on the screen, as soon as she said, we're out of weapons, we got one more system, and the little light blinked, sword. I was sold. I was all in. I actually literally squeezed right in the middle of the movie theater.
He did.
They showed the
whole theater was not particularly nerderific. It was only a small number of nerd to norm ratio in the theater. And when that sword thing came on, Russ actually did out loud. He's like, "Oh,
that's a sword!"
Yes.
And it didn't blaze, but it was close enough.
It was really cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch all sorts of the same shows you did that you watched when you were a kid that had all those, launch fighter rocket, launch this attack, launch
pressure punch.
Yes, that thing. I didn't watch that, so I wasn't familiar with that, but I think you were channeling your inner 12-year-old the entire time.
Yeah, it had like every classic anime / kaiju / Godzilla stuff in there, all rolled up in one great movie. I've seen people online saying things like, well, why didn't they just shoot the rockets? Clearly you've never watched the anime before. Who cares? It's not about realism. You just got to take your engineering hat off, put your geek hat on, and just have fun.
I think you really, you have to totally check any sense of reality at the door, because the things that happen, like, well, why would they? No, why would they? Don't just take the why out of your vocabulary where you watch the movie, and then you'll have fun with it.
Yes. And I love that it didn't start with, like the genesis of the Jaeger program. It actually started like 5 or 6 or however many years it was after the first kaiju attack. So it was like, there's already been a lot of Jaegers, and the guys are heroes, and there's this whole thing going on, and there's a drama of what happens, and but I just love the whole premise. I love the effects. There's the right balance of sort of fuzzy graphics, but then really clear what was happening. I just love every bit of it.
And the end battle, which I really won't say anything about because it will totally spoil the whole movie for everybody, or anybody who's thinking, I don't mind a little spoiler, it would be big. But the crazy scenes that happen, the crazy moments where the kaiju bite the dust, did have the entire theater doing that out loud. It was so good.
It was awesome, and there were a couple real moments that were like right out of a scene of like anime when they just like do their move and just like everything pauses for a second and you realize the epicness of it. It was just so great, and I want to talk about like end too because there's some cool little. Oh, it was just so good.
But when you say there was anime, even in the very beginning, there were scenes that made me think of two things: either anime or looked like panes from a comic book.
Yes.
There was one in particular when it's very early on. They're landing, and it's landing in a helicopter, and it's pouring rain, and it's a woman. You don't know this, but she's standing with this huge black umbrella, and the rain is pouring down, and they show her from the back as the helicopter lands, and it's just her with the umbrella, and it looked like exactly like a scene out of anime. Like I had that moment, I thought, God, it almost doesn't even look real anymore to me. It's so perfectly done. It looks animated for just a split second.
Yeah, it could have been a comic book movie. Some of that felt like they kind of set up like the Iron Man and the Marvel movies to have those moments of this is a comic book panel come to life.
Yeah,
they do the same thing in this, and it's really really spectacular. They did a great job.
And I like the kaiju because they weren't. You think like Godzilla monsters, which are kind of cheesy guys in costumes. You think they're cheesy. They did a really cool blend. They sort of look like dinosaurs / aliens, but not in a I'm going to have nightmares for a month way. Right. More in a just, oh my God, that is so cool kind of way. Like they were scary and they made you jump and kind of when they did things, but they're not nightmare-inducing monsters.
And the thing that was cool was, I know a lot of people when they saw the trailers, they were concerned about the dual pilots being. And I remember seeing online some people were like, well, I hope they explain why there's 2 pilots, or at least address it. Not only do they explain it, but it's actually one of the primary plot points of the movie.
It is. It becomes really important because you do wonder that previews like, why would they have 2 guys? Why do they do all this complex, like crazy machinations to get 2 people in there? And you suddenly go, oh, and they explain it to you right off the bat. It's not something you have to wait to hear 3/4 of the way through the film. It's right off the bat. They're like, this is why there are 2 pilots, and and it makes sense.
I just don't know what's not to like about this movie. I like everything about it.
I thought it was very fun.
Now, the credits, you got to stay.
Yes.
One of the best lines in the whole film is at the end of the beginning of the credits, if that makes sense.
Don't say it. I think I read that there's a site called Movie Stinger. Is that what I found out what it was? That they give you whether or not there's something to watch in the credits or at the end of the credits, and they'll even say to you, 2 minutes, 29 seconds into the credits. And I think it's about that far into this one. There's a scene that is absolutely worth waiting for. It is one of the best moments of the entire movie.
Yes, it is.
And all of us who sat there and waited, all of us cheered. Everybody in the theater just burst out. It was such a good moment.
This needs to have a sequel. This movie's just that good.
I also thought, in my nerd girl go to lots of convention kind of way, that I cannot wait to see what kind of cosplay comes out of this. Because if you think of the characters, the potential for just awesome cosplay in this one, especially the scene that cannot be named, is...
Yeah, and I loved, here's another thing that was awesome, was the idea... Just the sets, like when the kaiju were dead, or the cities were rebuilt around their corpses. So you'd have these buildings, areas of cities with the rib cage of one of these giant kaiju just sticking out of it, part of the background scenery. It just was such a cool. And then there's this whole black market now in kaiju parts and the whole world. I mean, what a great RPG setting! It's just really, really some neat, explores some really interesting ideas.
It was good. So, how does it rate against the other movies you've liked this summer? Let's say like Star Trek and Iron Man.
That's a tough call because I think, I think that probably if you look at like the acting and some of the lines, I think you got to give the nod to maybe Iron Man or Star Trek in terms of like that stuff. But in terms of being a totally new IP and just really going out there with just raw sci-fi, over the top goodness, with destroying cities actually makes sense. I know we talked on the show quite a bit now about these movies that just destroying cities for destroying cities' sake. But in a kaiju movie, you know that going in. That's part of the whole shtick. And the part of the thing is we're trying to stop the city from being destroyed.
Well, that's what there's an acknowledgement in this one because I was driven nuts like you were by Man of Steel by the destruction at the end. I'm like, what the heck, Superman? Did you forget your mission?
Right.
But I felt like in this, it made sense. Yes, cities get destroyed, but they're constantly always trying to make the destruction happen outside the city. They're trying to keep it out of the city. And when it gets into the city, it's like, crud, it got past our defenses and we're in the city. Right. We got to wrap this thing up because we got to get these guys out of our city and keep it away. So, yeah, there's destruction in the city, but it's very blatantly recognized that is what we're trying to keep from happening. And when it happens, it's like an oops, there's no way around it now.
Yeah, and when it does get a little over the top, like when they grab the container ship and start beating a kaiju with a container ship.
Like a club.
You just know that's just for a comic book effect. Come on.
It was awesome. And it was fun.
It was awesome. I loved it.
I'm okay, yeah. And they use
I was totally okay with that.
Containers is like smashing the kaiju's head with the giant ship containers.
Yeah.
Slam. Yeah, you just have to have fun with this one. You can't take it too seriously in terms of it being well written and thought provoking and all that. No, none of those things. It is monsters, robots, and like hotshot pilots, pretty much.
It's Top Gun and giant robots.
There's
nothing wrong with
Top Gun and giant robots with monsters.
With monsters, yeah.
Okay, so scale of 1 to 5.
Oh, 1 to 5? It's 5.
It's a 5.
If you're a geek and you like anime and you like giant robots, you have to see. This isn't even an optional movie for you. You must go see it.
Okay, so there you have it from my special guest, Russ Wakelin.
Ooh, thanks to me.
Who says, yes, go see it, and I do too. Okay, so that's it. Now I gotta make him be quiet and do other parts of the show. Okay. Shh, quiet. I'm cutting you off. Where's his microphone? Bye.
Hey, Craig, we got a brand new sponsor this episode.
And we would like to welcome Miniature Market to the world of the D6 generation.
We are so excited to have these guys on the show. It's great to see these fantastic online retailers, and Miniature Market is up there in the top tier. These guys have a fantastic looking website, very easy to absorb, beautiful imagery, really professional. I mean, you get the live customer support tab right on the side. They click that. You can immediately get online with someone, chat with them, ask some questions. What's also great, though, is check out the selection of board games and role-playing games on this site. I mean, that is just amazing.
There's some serious depth here on their board games and their role-playing games.
There really is. They've got... they're showing off the latest stuff, whether it's you're looking for the new faction for War Machine or maybe you're looking for the new Attack Wing game.
Attack Wing,
Star Trek using the X-Wing rules. How awesome is that? And here's what really makes these guys at the Miniature Market so fantastic. Over 20,000 products in stock. I mean, it's just crazy. They have a fantastic rewards program. You get points every time you buy something. You can exchange those points in for great deals. Speaking of deals, they have a great deal of the day. You got to go check them out every day. Make sure you see what the latest hotness is there. And the thing to do is the best way to get the deals on them is to join their Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/miniature market or just search for Miniature Market on Facebook, you're going to find it. Here's what you want to do. When you go to their Facebook page, click on the D6G icon under the cover photo. Really important. Only places this is available is on their Facebook page, okay? Go check that out. What you're going to see when you click there is a special page with specials just for D6G listeners. And here's a tip for you right now. When they launch these specials for D6G listeners only, and you click on this little link, only the first 100 people to go there will get a super special coupon for super extra deals. It could be anything, and it's going to change every episode, so you never know what you're going to get. It could be free shipping. It could be a certain percentage off your order. Who knows what you're going to get on this stuff? It could be anything. So make sure you go there and check this out. So go to facebook.com/miniature market, click the D6G logo to get that cool deal. Also, the service here is incredible. Not just miniatures like the name implies, tons of board games and fantastic unboxing videos over at YouTube. Just search for Miniature Market Vids to check all that as well. Just great stuff over at miniaturemarket.com.
Yep.
I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute. And I'm back. Rafe Hollywood Granger here on a balmy New England night, a little hot and sticky. Speaking of hot and sticky, tomorrow I face Wakeland in our 6th battle of red versus blue. For those of you following along, I play Kador, and for whatever reason I like to pronounce it like that, and Russ plays Signar. Now, we are completely evenly matched. I have 3 games, he has 3 games. But I really want to talk at War Machine here, but I really want to talk about the last battle, because Russ just has been bringing the heat, man, and it's been so fun. Now, for whatever reason, Russ and I can go without playing games for like a year, and then we can like strike back up and start off where we left off playing War Machine, and it's just loads of fun. For whatever reason, he and I always play where we don't really argue over the rules. If we have rules debates, we just sort of work them out very amicably, and yet we have very competitive games. And the other thing that's really fun is we're able to play at a meta level. Like, I know Stryker so well, and he knows Vlad so well, that we really don't make dumb moves for assassination kills. Now, we don't necessarily know each other's troops or each other's units that well, but the the battles that we have are really fun because we can play at this meta level. And he played this game recently where he brought his Thunderhead and his Hammersmith and his 2 units of Storm Guard, playing with E Stryker. He's got his Hunter, which always gives me a tough time. But what he did was he went first. Now, Russ never goes first. He always likes to play second, and he always likes to do a flank roll. And all of a sudden, he goes first. Well, the next thing he did, which really threw me off, was he marches right up the field, stands in the middle of the board, and says, "Take me out." Now, that's what I usually do to him, which plays in particularly good strengths for Kador. So tactically, strategically, he already had me on my back foot. I didn't even know what to do. Now, this was the battle we talked about a couple weeks ago. So it was really fun to see him break out and do some new tactics. And he went ahead and he trounced me that game. Then we played, that was his first win out of the 3 series. Then he played, we played another mission where he even warned me. It was a new league mission. He even warned me, and I just wasn't paying attention. And I had to get Vlad out of the backfield, and I wasn't paying attention. He warned me every 3 turns. You got to get him out of there. You're going to give me 2 victory points. You got to get him out of there. You're going to give me 2 victory points. I'm like, I know, but I had plans for Vlad. I didn't get him out of there. I gave him 2 victory points, so he won that game in like 20 minutes. So then we played a 3rd game, and this was with my Conquest. And I had Vlad and the Conquest, and all the rest were troops, my Men of War, and Iron Fangs to protect the Conquest. And my whole goal was to use Signs Importance with Vlad, and then have him, know how to deal with the Conquest, which is exactly what happened. And here's what's great about War Machine. So this particular time, my strategy, which was also, I was also helped by Doc. He helped me do some list building and some strategy here to use my Colossal the right way. So he, this time I was owning him. I was up in his face. I was doing everything that Kador does. I was making the rolls. Signs Importance was just wiping him up left and right. His Storm Guard were totally ineffectual as they were messing with my Men of War. The Conquest walks up and eats 2 of his jacks for breakfast. I had put some wounds on the Thunderhead. The Conquest, the Colossal walks up and goes, boom, eats that for breakfast. Boom, with his other fist, eats the Hammer Fist for breakfast. But that wasn't what was enjoyable. What was enjoyable is Stryker is still alive and camping out near that objective, and he was able to really use E Stryker's ability and just assassinate Vlad. And that is what people hate about War Machine. That is what I love about War Machine. If anybody would have come by at any given turn, they would have thought I had the game in the bag. But War Machine really rewards you if you just don't quit. And that's what I really love about the game. So even though I lost, even though he rounded up the score, And I did a little bit of a bold move to allow E-Striker to do that. I knew it when I was doing it, but I still wanted to try it. And, I just walked away from that game feeling happy. Number one, my Colossal got to eat Chew Jacks for breakfast. Number two, Russ walked away with the well-deserved win. And trust me, I've done that to him in the past countless of amounts of times where he's winning the game tactically and he's strategically winning, and then Vlad pulls something out of his rear and just freaking eats Striker, and I win the game. So it was just a blast. And so now we play our rubber match tomorrow. I have no idea what list he's going to bring. I'm suspecting he's got a Stormwall in there. I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that. Probably field Gorman and maybe just go Colossal to Colossal. I'm kind of thinking of like tweaking him out, freaking him out, and not bringing a Colossal and taking up other things to deal with it, or just ignore it completely. But I had so much fun playing that Colossal that I'm probably going to bring it again. So we have our rubber match tomorrow at Myriad Games, Manchester location, and I'm going to play on some finely modeled terrain to tables in a nice clean atmosphere, and have some nice drinks ready to go. And I'll see how the red versus blue rubber match goes. Hey, stay tuned for that comic. And I'm sure Russ and I will have a crazy game as always. And so now it's off to build my list. All right, in my remaining few minutes here, I have to talk to you about two games. Prison Architect. I really am loving that sim game. You guys should go check it out. It's on Steam. It's in alpha, not even beta. It's in alpha. And so it's got some wonky parts to it, and I don't think, it's kind of easy to build your prison and just let it kind of hum along. There's really not much that challenge, maybe after you're successful a couple, 3 times, but it's still really fun. And another game that I really like is called Don't Starve. Now, this game has captured my attention by storm. It's kind of this hit-or-miss survival game. You walk around, you got to grab food to eat. You see a flower, you're like, I wonder what I can do with that. Oh, look, I can build a garland. That'll help me with my insanity meter. There's a hunger meter, an insanity meter, and a health meter. And, then you see this mushroom and you eat that. Ooh, that poisons you. It gives you food, but it takes away your health. And it's really cool. And then there's this whole, mechanism to study and learn more, recipes that you can do. You can build hay walls. You can build structures. You can build health potions. Of course, requires the different ingredients. So I've only scratched the surface of it. Oh, and the really cool thing is that you survive for a day, and then nighttime comes and it gets really tough to survive, and then you survive another day. And so the goal is to see how many days you can survive, and when you die, that's it. You're dead. You have to start all over from the beginning with no gear. And usually games like that frustrate me, but not this one. This game's actually fun for some reason. Maybe because it's fun, you can sit down, play it in half an hour. And if you're really doing well, you can just save it and move on, or you can be done in an hour. And I don't know. Even though I die, I don't feel frustrated. I feel really satisfied. And I can't wait to try out a new combo. So check it out. That one's called Don't Starve. The other one, Prison Architect. Both on Steam. Highly recommend them. And hey, until next time.
One of the things that Craig and I like a lot about our show is we get close and really get to know some of our sponsors here. And we are proud to have some of the best sponsors in the gaming industry. And one of those sponsors, without a doubt, is Cool Mini or Not. These guys have made some of the most well-known, famous Kickstarters and money-making, but they make a lot of money with their Kickstarters because they deliver the goods. They back up the excitement and the fun with fantastic stuff. Whether it's Zombicide and the recent expansions for Zombicide, whether it is, Rivet Wars, which is currently being produced and shipped. They just finished up Chaos Ball, which looks like a fantastic, and I backed that baby myself, even though they're sponsor rating. It's a special deal. I just backed it because I knew it's Cool Mini or Not. It's going to have tons of great miniatures. It's going to have great rule set, be fun, fast, exciting to play. How about Super Dungeon Explorer? I've had a great time with my daughters painting all those wonderful models. It's a great compromise between fun models to build, but also, and now actually the newer Super Dungeon Explorer stuff all comes pre-assembled. When it first came out, you had to assemble them. Now it's all pre-assembled, so they've really got a great balance between board game, but great looking models that are fun to paint for hobbyists as well. Just great stuff. The line now for Super Dungeon Explorer is crazy. A lot of great variety, great options. And it's become my go-to dungeon crawl game. I'm really, really enjoying it. So head on over to Cool Mini or Not. Check out the galleries upon galleries of fantastically painted pictures. And then click on their store and check out the page after page of awesome games that have great components, great rules, and are just great fun to play. CoolMiniOrNot.com.
This is the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com.
Hey, Craig, have you been to GameSloot.com lately?
I am and have, yes.
You know, the thing to remember about GameSalute is they are a publisher as well as pretty much the movers and shakers behind a lot of the games in the game industry here. And if you go to their website right now, click on the Games tab, you will see some of their more well-known titles, including Sunrise City and Island Fortress. And Cartoon is the one I talked about. Remember the cool game for family and friends there? Frontier Skies looks awesome, like steampunk dirigible things floating around there.
That's cool.
Just some great stuff from them. Now, the other thing, too, a little known fact, if you go to GameBugle.com, that is the news page for GameSalute. So they moved it off to their own thing. That's also run by the folks at GameSalute and powered by GameSalute stuff there. And Tom Bassel does most of the editing on that. So check that all out. You can see what's going on in the latest in gaming. So basically, you want the latest in gaming, you want the best published titles, or let's say you're a design studio. You're thinking about, I want to make my own game. I've got a great game design. I need a publisher. Your first stop should be GameSalute. These guys will help you get the game published. They'll talk about whether the best solution for you is Kickstarter or some other method. They'll help you get through the Kickstarter process. Just really great experienced minds there working to make sure the best games and your game get out to the market. So check out GameSalute.com.
That was a bugle.
Worlds to conquer, foes to vanquish, violence to sow, and medieval crops to reap. The whole world of gaming at your fingertips. The D6 generation. Born to game.
Welcome back. Well, I've said before, I really enjoy the Bioshock games, and we talked to Colby a couple episodes ago about Bioshock Infinite, the board game, and Plaid Hat Games was kind enough to send us an advanced review copy of Bioshock Infinite.
Infinite.
And I could not wait to play it and get it to the table. Thank you, Craig. Couldn't wait to get it to the table, and so we finally did. I played it 3 times. Craig, you played it once. And we want to share our thoughts with you, give our classic sort of overview of how the whole mechanics work, and then share our thoughts with you. And don't worry, even though this is a review copy, it will not taint our opinion of the game.
No, because you will be getting this review copy someday.
Yes, we give it away. We give all of them to the listeners, so there'll be a contest after our current one, giving this game away. Now, Ted, you have not played this game yet?
No.
No, and you have not played the video game?
No, but I played the first Bioshock,
okay, so you
I really want to play the video game, just haven't had time. And I saw the screenshots, like the photos you guys took. Mm-hmm. You posted up on Twitter, and it looked really cool.
Oh, good. So you're interested in the universe then. So this is kind of...
Yeah.
So we're going to ask you to jump in here as every man, ask some questions, make sure I don't go too fast and gloss over things that are confusing. But also, we're going to ask for your measure at the end, based on how we describe it, if you, as a Bioshock Rapture player and potential Infinite fan, would be interested in the board game afterwards. We'll see what you think of that. Cool. So here we go. All right. So, and you can ask any questions you want about, what things we missed and help you decide. Mm-hmm. So here we go. This thing's published in 2013. Not yet. This is an advanced copy. They're hoping for fall, so you're probably going to see it at Gen Con, is probably what's going to happen here. And the designer is Isaac Vega, who is also responsible for City of Remnants, which I really like as well. We've not reviewed it yet, but that's a great game. I bought that one myself. Good game. So I like Isaac. He's a good designer. This game is for 2 or 4 players. It is not a 3-player game. 5 is right out, and it is not a solo game. So it's great as 2 players. Some people ask us if you have a good 2-player media game. This is a great 2-player game. It's also a great 4-player co-op game. How it works is there are 2 factions always in this game fighting. You are either the founders, the guys that control by Comstock, or you are the Vox Populi, sort of the rebels fighting against the founders. You're playing as either one of those factions, and if you're playing 2-player, you're both sides. If you're playing 4-player, 2 players ally together to control one of the factions each for an alliance game. The estimated game time on the box is an hour. I've had some games run 45 minutes. I've had other games run 2 hours. So, somewhere in the middle there is probably fine once you know the rules. Probably about an hour and a half is probably realistic. And the MSRP for this thing, the suggested retail price is $84.99. Right, Craig?
That is correct.
$84.99. So after I tell the components, we'll let you know if we think that's a good value or not. And now, what's interesting about the game, so you're not playing the main characters. You're playing the two factions, the Founders and the Vox Populi, but running around the game, controlled by the game, are Booker and Elizabeth, the two main. Booker's the main hero, the person you play in the video game, and Elizabeth is sort of like your companion and central character to the game. And in the board game, they're just going around causing trouble and disruption. And some interesting events happen as well around them. So they are definitely central to the game, but you're not playing them, which is sort of interesting. All right, so how are we doing so far? Making sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. So let's talk about what's in the box. So, Craig, what is a box opening from an alternate 19th century or early 1900s box opening sound like?
I believe it's early 20th century.
Okay, early 20th, yes.
From the Wikipedia entry search that I did. What does it sound like? You open this box, you've got it in front of you, and it's a giant box. You don't see many boxes this big lately.
Yep.
And then it goes... That's the songbird.
Nice. I like it. That's good.
That was a sky rail at the end.
It was a guy on a sky rail. Okay.
On a sky rail.
All right, so inside is a game board. It's got some really interesting artwork. Craig, what did you think of the art on the game board?
I thought it was very cool. It kind of all went together as a style and was sort of informed or helped or supported the theme of that kind of era that it was trying to recreate. Was kind of
the floating city, and it's divided into territories. Each territory has multiple locations, kind of like a Risk board, but instead of water, it doesn't look like the world or anything, but instead of water between areas, there's sky between areas, and then you can see the sort of obvious sky rail lines moving around from the different areas. So that's your game board. You're going to unfold that baby. Then you're going to have a rule book. It's 21 pages. It's full color. It's got a great quick reference on the back. It's got a nice, easy-to-digest index. The rules themselves are easy to digest. And, Craig, I don't know that we referred to the rule book more than once, I think.
I don't know if that we did once.
The rules are very straightforward in this game. They're well presented. I think they did a good job there. It also looks pretty. Also in the game are a bunch of fancy D6s. So there are a bunch of combat dice divided into 3 colors. And instead of pips, there are numbers on the side, but not all dice are equal. So the red dice, for example, I think range from 4 to 8 on them. Numbers 4 to 8 on a D6. And the blue dice are lower than that, and the white dice go from 0 to 3. So you got your not so good dice, the white ones, your medium dice, the blue ones, and your really kick butt dice, the red ones. You also got these 3 skyline dice, which are brown, and they have thumbs ups on some of the sides, and they have numbers from 0 to 3 on them, or 0 to 1 and 2, I think, on them as well. So more about how those work later. Then you've got 2 player quick reference sheets, one for each faction, and these quick reference sheets serve 2 purposes. On the top half of them are all the sort of quick reference rules, like the phase orders and the cost for recruiting new pieces and stuff. But on the bottom half are a bunch of little spots where you can put tokens to indicate the kind of upgrades. So you're going to actually upgrade your forces as you play. You're going to get better stats on your cards. You're going to unlock special abilities on your pieces. All that kind of stuff's going to happen as you go along. Also, there's 3 Elizabeth timeline cards. These are like sort of big mats, and on the side of them, there's a bunch of sort of points where the Elizabeth token can move down, and there's different events that happen in the game as her token progresses. So it's sort of like what happens to Elizabeth as the game goes on. Now, there's 3 different of these cards, and you're going to draw one of these cards at the beginning of the game. That's the only one you're going to use. That gives some replayability. So each time you play the game, Elizabeth will have different things that occur to her. And again, it copies the theme of the video game, where there's alternate realities and Elizabeth moving through different time zones, and you never know what's going to happen. Now, the box also includes tons of plastic. Ted, have you seen some of the bits in this game, pictures of them at all?
Yeah. Like I was saying on your Twitter feed, I was checking out the screenshots, and I thought the board just looked beautiful, like the way it's painted and all the different buildings, that float around the sky.
Yeah,
How
about the plastic sculpts? You see the songbird or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I like the guys who, I forget what they're called. They're like the big daddies, but in this version of Bioshock.
Yeah, the handymen.
Yeah, the handymen. I thought they looked cool, and the airships, like the Zeppelin-looking vehicles, like look really cool.
Yeah,
really
so
nice.
there's lots of plastic in this game. There's basically it's divided into 4 colors, but they're basically 2 shades of red. There's a light red and dark red pieces, and then there's 13 dark red and I remember 13 light red and 12 dark red, and then 13 light blue and 12 dark blue. And basically what those are is if you're playing 2-player, all the 2 shades are 1 player's bits. But if you're playing 4-player, then the light red and dark red get separated out, and those are the 2 allies pieces, right? One guy plays light red, one guy plays dark red. You're all the same faction, but you're controlling different bits. Same with the blue player for Comstock. So, Craig, what did you think of the plastic bits?
I don't play the video game, but they seemed to be very cool. They're very high quality. They're very, they are board game pieces. They're made out of that plastic, that sort of plastic, so they're going to be very durable. But at the same time, they've really captured, from what I could tell, at looking online for different pictures to compare them to, the handyman looks. You could easily see that it's a handyman. There's cool detail on there. The songbird looks like a songbird. Each of the 4 leader figures are cool and they're unique, kind of characterful. I don't know if they key to specific leader cards that we'll get into later, but they look like they probably do. And yeah, I really thought it was cool. The blimp looks like a cool blimp right out of the TV commercial, which is the most I've seen action-oriented stuff.
Yeah, I thought they were cool, and they definitely brought the game to life. And then also there's 2 gray bits. There's the Booker, and there's Elizabeth. So those are the 2 neutral pieces that run around the board.
Detail on those models are crazy for their size.
They actually are. They look great. You can see Elizabeth's dress blowing as she moves, and she's reaching out, and Booker's got his gun out. It looks awesome. Now, also, you got these cardboard structure tokens. More about those later, but each side's got a bunch of those for each color. You got a bunch of territory tokens. More about this. Lots of cardboard in here. There's destruction tokens. There's a bunch of money tokens. There's 10 Founder Victory tokens and 10 Vox Populi tokens. I really like how these work. I'll talk about these later. And then there's also the Elizabeth token marker, which is going to move down her timeline to sort of show what state Elizabeth's currently in. You also get tons of cards in this game. Basically, each player's going to get his own deck of cards. So there's a light blue deck of cards, there's a dark blue deck of cards, and there's a light red deck of cards and a dark red deck of cards to match the pieces. There's also 4 leader cards for each color. So there's 4 red leader cards and 4 blue leader cards. So each time you play the game, you're going to draw a different leader. So that's going to give you like a faction power, but it's going to change each time. So there's 4 faction leaders that are always Comstock. Like there's Comstock in there and some of his other buddies. But it's going to keep it different every time, which is neat. And then there's a deck of victory point cards and a deck of world event cards. And more about how those work later. Also, you're going to get a little card that tells you the turn order. It's a very determined turn order to make sure that there's always alternating player order when you play a 4-player game. There's a giant first player token to keep track of that. And then, of course, there's a bunch of upgrade tokens to put on your little upgrade mat to keep track of what's upgraded and what's not. So this whole thing comes in at $85. Now, Craig, seeing all the pieces up close, do you think $85 is a fair price for what's in there?
I think in the current market, Russ, $85 seems to be fair for all the different. Got enough plastic for 4 people to play, and it's very high quality plastic. The cardboard is very thick, very good quality cardboard, and there's lots of that too. The victory point chits and everything. So yeah, I think it's a more than a fair price for this game.
Yeah. What do you think about that number? How does that number sound to you, Ted? If you're thinking about, you saw this game on the shelf and it's Bioshock, it's $85. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it totally looks like a really, really high quality game. You know, all the pieces, all the cards. You guys had the one picture where you've got like, you can just see everything spread out, and it just looks like a really, really high quality, like product. So, and it's tied into the video game, which I think gives it more value in my opinion. Yeah. And just awesome. Like just, if the gameplay is good, the eye candy alone is just pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of bits in here. And the other thing I should mention is on the cards, all the artwork is original. So they didn't just take like shots from the video game, put them on the cards. They actually drew new artwork with a definite Plaid Hat Games art style that reflects the video game pieces, which is just great. So you're getting that in there as well. I think I'd like to see it $10 less for some reason. 85 is on the edge of, I don't know, but it's probably because of licensing fees and everything. But I think 85 is still a good deal. But I think $10 less might have been a little better. But I still think it's a good price. All right, so let's talk about setup. Setup in this game is pretty straightforward. You flop out the game board. You're going to pick your colors. If you're playing 2-player, one guy gets the light red and the dark red. One guy gets the light blue, dark blue. If you're playing 4 players, just figure out who's going to be on the team together and give them their colors. They get the colors. They get the plastic that matches their color. They get the structure tokens that match their color, which are basically little tokens. Some are shaped like strongholds. Some are shaped like turrets, and some are shaped like little whistles. And you're going to grab those. And you're also going to get your decks of cards that match your color. So grab all those things. Shuffle your deck of cards up. Each player is also going to get a random leader card that matches their color. So there are 4 red leaders. So each red player is going to get a leader card, and each blue player is going to get a blue leader card. We're also going to randomly pick an Elizabeth timeline. So you're going to shuffle up the 3 Elizabeth timelines, pick one out of there, put it face up. Everybody's going to know which timeline you're playing on today. You're also going to start putting your dudes on the map as per the book. So this game does have fixed setup, meaning that you always start in the same place with the same equipment and the same plastic and same models. And the book tells you where to put your bits. Normally, I don't care for that too much. That's one of my dings I put against Game of Thrones. With a fixed setup like that, your opening moves are sort of consistent, but there's some interesting things they do to mitigate that in this particular game. Also going to let the faction reference mats. Where a good spot where both players in the same team can see them, because in addition to referencing the turn order and sequence of play, you're also going to reference your upgrades. That's really kind of important to keep an eye on those. Also going to shuffle the victory point deck, put that on the edge of the board. Shuffle the world event deck, put that on the edge of the board. Now, here's an interesting little bit. So each territory where there is not plastic, so that's most of them, because there's only 4 starting spots on the board. Light blue gets a spot, dark blue gets a spot, light red gets a spot, and dark red gets a spot. Then you've got all these tokens that go in the empty territories of the board. This is sort of like the resistance that's there. So you can't just waltz in and take an unoccupied territory. You got to go in and beat whatever's there now. Sort of like the local rebels or local whatever. So you're going to shuffle these little tokens up and put them all face down on the unoccupied spaces. And when you enter these spaces, you're going to flip them over and see what you're fighting. So that's one of the things that makes the fixed setup not the same every time, because one time you might start and resistance near you is very, very challenging. Next time you might start and you might get a really cakewalk to get the first few moves in. So you never really know how easy it's going to be to take over the area around you. All right. Next thing you're going to do is remember that victory point card deck? You're going to flip over the very first card in the victory point card deck and make it face up. And these victory point cards that are face up are additional things you can try to achieve to give yourself more victory points. More about that in a little bit. And each player is also going to draw 5 cards from their matching color deck. So if Craig is playing light blue, Craig's going to draw 5 cards from his light blue deck. I draw 5 cards from my light red deck. Other 2 players do that with theirs as well. Now we've got our hands of 5 cards. We're going to randomly determine a player 1 by rolling some dice. And that's going to be it. And we're going to be ready to start the game. The thing to remember is the turn order is not clockwise from player 1. It's in a specific order based on color. So it's always going to alternate from light blue to light red to dark blue to dark red. And just goes back and forth always. So whoever's... Go ahead.
There's a cool reference card. I thought that was a really cool mechanic and a cool way to do it.
Yeah, it's nice little reference cards. So you always remember whoever first player, you just go down the reference card from there and get it done. So that's set up. And it doesn't take that long. Craig, what did you think about getting everything started? It was pretty much set up for you, but
it was all set up for me before I sat down. So it seemed great to me.
Making sense so far, Ted? All right.
Very fast.
All right. So now, what I always like to tell up front, and I'm going to tell our listeners the same things I tell first-time players, and Craig, you can tell me if I got the information across to you when you first started playing. Mm-hmm. First thing I like to make sure of is that everybody knows the goal. The goal in this game, it is, as Colby said, a dudes on the map game. When someone says that, they basically mean it's a world conquest game. But it's a world conquest game in that we're trying to get a certain number of victory points. The goal is to be the first faction to get to 10 victory points. But when you tell your players that, you also want to tell them how to get those victory points. Well, the most obvious way is when you look at the map, kind of like Risk. You know how in Risk you get bonuses for controlling all of Asia or all of Europe or all of North America? Well, this game's the same thing. The locations, sort of the giant floating islands, are divided up into little locations, but each giant floating island is what they call territory. And next to each territory is a little... on the game board is a little area that tells you the name of the territory. It lists all the locations in the territory, so there's no confusion. And it lists the total victory points you will get if you control that entire territory. So some territories with only 2 locations are worth 1 victory point. Other territories that have 4 locations are worth 3 victory points. So when your faction controls all the locations in one area, territory, they're going to get the victory points for that. The other way you get victory points is by accomplishing those face-up victory point cards. Now, in the beginning of the game, there's only 1 face-up. But as the game progresses, more and more of these cards will become face-up. So there'll be more and more ways to get victory points in addition to controlling territory. So you're trying to take over areas of the map, but you're also trying to accomplish these secondary objectives as well. And if at any point your team hits 10 victory points, game over, you win. There's no like...
to 10?
Yeah, as soon as someone hits 10. And that's how Matt was able to zip in there at the end and take over that section and just boom, get it. All right? Now, one thing I really like about this is that each side has these sort of giant rectangular cardboard victory point tokens. They're red for the Vox Populi and they're blue for the Foundation, or the Founders. as you achieve victory points, like, for example, if you control a 2 victory point territory, you take the 2 cardboard tokens and put them next to the name of the territory. And that shows us that A, you've got that territory, but B, your little pile of 10 victory point tokens starts going down. And so you can start seeing, as those piles get lower, you're seeing which faction is doing better. And when you get a victory point card, you put your tokens on top of the card. So what starts happening is you start seeing, oh God, they're getting really low on victory points. They're about to win the game. We got to do something. So it's kind of a nice visual cue to remind you where everybody is and where they're getting the victory points and how things are going.
Hey, Russ, do you have to hold the territory? Or do you just have to get it once and then you get those victory points?
Great question, Ted. So the victory points that go next to the territory name, as soon as you lose control of that territory, one location falls from your grasp, your victory points come off the territory and will go back to your unused pile. So you basically lose control of it. Okay. So the territory control can ebb and flow. Now, the victory point cards, though, once you get those, you can never lose those. So those are much more a great value. But the problem with those is they're harder to get in many cases, and they're only worth 1 victory point. The territories can be worth a lot. So what you kind of want to do is grab a bunch of territories and, oh, by the way, have it coincide with a bunch of victory point conditions, and all of a sudden, bam, you jump way ahead.
Right, you got to, like, time it together.
So it's really tricky. You got to watch for it.
Cool.
So that's what's really interesting part of the game, too. And I think with repeated plays, you're going to start knowing some of those combos, and it'll be even more difficult to pull them off, which is kind of neat.
Like taking Australian risk.
Exactly. It's exactly like that. You're right. So that's victory conditions. Everybody get how you'd win. Mm-hmm. All right.
Cool.
So now a word about the cards, too. So the next thing I did when I was teaching the game was talk about the cards, because the whole game centers around your hand of cards. And at its heart, this is not a 4X game, okay? This is not like Rune Wars or Clash of Cultures where you're exploring land and you're building an economy. No, you're really just managing a very simple set, because your army's just kind of there and you're fighting and you're recruiting more guys and fighting, but there's no like economic engine or anything like that. But basically each turn you're going to get 5 cards. Now these 5 cards, they've got all kinds of cool artwork on them and they got special abilities in the bottom, but ignore all that. The thing you want to start focusing on in the beginning is there's 3 primary numbers, sort of very large on the left-hand side of the card. There's a red number, a gold number, and a silver number. The red number is the card's combat value if it's played in combat. Higher is better. The gold number is the card's influence value if it's being used during a vote. It's how many influence points it is worth. Again, higher is better. And the silver number is the amount of money the card's worth is if you discard it to produce money. Higher is better. Basically, you're only going to be able to use these cards, though, for one of these 3 things every turn. And you don't get more cards until the refresh phase, which is the very end of the entire turn, after you've dealt with politics, after you've dealt with your offensive combat, after you've dealt with trying to produce units, after you've dealt with handling other people attacking you, then you get more cards. So if you burn all of your cards for a big political vote, you don't have those cards to generate money, and you don't have those cards to help you in combat. If you burn all your cards in offense on combat, and you're one of the earlier players to go this turn, you don't have any cards for defense. So really, one of the toughest tests about this game is figuring out, I've got 5 cards. How threatened am I? Am I going to use all my cards to generate money this turn? Because if I do, I'm not going to be well defended. I'm not going to need political influence, that kind of thing. So that's where you're always going to feel pinched in this game. What am I using my 5 cards for? Right? So that's the key to remember about these cards, and it'll make more sense as we go into the main rules. All right, so let's talk about how the game actually plays. So far with me, Ted?
Yeah, I like that the mechanic on the cards. It's pretty cool.
So here we go. So we're getting into the phases. So the very first thing that happens is the world event phase. Oh, also I should mention that when we set the game up and we put up Elizabeth's timeline, there's a little Elizabeth token. That goes in the very first position on the Elizabeth timeline, which on all 3 timelines is Elizabeth is trapped in the tower with the bird. So she's basically trapped, right? Okay, so first up is the giant phase. So there's 3 main phases. There's a world event phase, there's a player turn phase, and there was a refresh phase. So in the world event phase, all the players do this together. Then in the player phase, each player is going to get a turn to do all of his little things. And then in the refresh phase, we all kind of clean the round up and get ready for the next turn. So the world events phase is really interesting. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to flip over the top world event card. Now, you might see this in a lot of games. This is sort of that random event that happens every turn that causes chaos and breaks the game up from being just another game of Risk. You see it in the Game of Thrones game with the Westeros cards, right? You see it in other games, too, where there's just random event cards in, like, Clash of Cultures, other things that happen as well. So you flip over the world event card, but what's interesting about this game is it's not an automatic event. The event's up for a vote. It's always a vote. And what you're going to do is you're going to read to the players what the vote's going to be for. And it might be, Comstock and the founders are having a great round of fundraising. Every founder player gets to have an extra unit and an extra action card this turn. So now that event though is only going to go off if it passes. So you got to vote on it. So what's going to happen now in player order, starting with player number 1, the first player token, he's going to lock in face down some number of cards from his hand, and the cards he's going to put face down are the ones that have the best influence value on them. Remember the gold number. To vote in favor or against this political event. Then player 2 is going to do it, then player 3, then player 4. So basically what's going to happen is we're all going to lock in some cards, and we're all going to flip them over. When the cards get flipped over, usually the political event will say all Comstock votes are positive, all, in this case, Vox Populi votes are negative because Vox Populi doesn't want this to come through. So their numbers are all negative. You add the whole thing together, you're going to get some value. So Craig might vote in favor, +5. I might vote against, -2. So now it's +3, and then so forth until you get a final number, right? So you're finally at a final number for vote. Let's say it's at +2. If the vote is at 0 or higher, the vote's going to pass. If the vote's a tie exactly at 0, that's all that happens. It's going to pass. If the vote's not exactly at 0, then what happens is Booker throws a wrench into the works, and he votes in favor of the losing side, and you roll a white die and add that number to the losing side's value. So there's always this little wild card that can make an event happen if it's close. And then that adds to the number, and if it's positive, if it's 0 or more, the event goes off. If it's less than 0, the event does. If it's a negative number, the event does not go off. Does that all make sense?
Do you get to talk to your partner in the faction?
Yeah, you do. But you got to be careful because you don't want to telegraph to the other 2 players. I might say, "Hey, I'm sitting on a +6 card right now." If I say that to you, you're going to be like, "Oh, great," but I might not. Then I won't burn because what you're trying to do is because remember, any cards that played in the political phase are not going to be available in the player's turn to generate money or to do attacks. So basically, you're trying to if you're going to spend political capital right now, if you're going to spend your cards right now to get a vote, you're going to want to try to draw players' other cards out too so that you're not the only one burning cards here. So if you telegraph that I've got this, I'm going to play 12 vote points right now in 2 cards, no one else is going to vote against you. You're going to win it, but I'm going to keep my cards for other things. So you want to try to draw them in a little bit.
But you could be lying.
You could be lying. That's the other part of the fun. So there's a little bit of, my favorite thing, there's a little bit of metagaming going on here for sure at this part. Now, a lot of metagaming.
Personally, that's cool because Chaos Ball has a similar thing.
Yes,
with your deck. So I just think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, and so what's cool about this is you're locking your cards in. Then what happens is, now one other factor to this though that makes it interesting is, win or lose, no matter how the vote goes, the player that put in the most influence is now player 1. So here's the interesting thing: even if you don't care if the vote passes or not, you might really want to be player number 1. So now you're like, oh crap, I got to get to be player 1 this turn for whatever reason. I want to move first, whatever. I got to build defenses before I get attacked. Whatever the reason you want to be player number 1 is, you got to put influence in for that too. So there's a double. Even if you're voting against it, it just doesn't matter. If I put in a value of 5 and it's negative, but everybody else's was positive, but only like 2, 2, and 2. Mine was the highest number with a 5, so I get to be player 1 now, right? So there's a 2-pronged thing here to this vote. And if it's a tie, you roll off white dice to see who randomly becomes the new leader of the new player 1 guy. So does voting make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So and I like that mechanic a lot. Craig, what did you think of the voting mechanic?
I don't. Well, the voting mechanic was fine. I found the voting mechanic with the Booker die was basically the coming together of all of the pieces of the game that I didn't really enjoy. I found that I was constantly needing more cards than I had, which I know is a design function of this kind of game, but to me it felt like I was really kind of behind. And there's a huge learning curve issue, I think, with this game, knowing how to mitigate the luck, because there's a lot of luck in the game. There are ways to mitigate most of it, but if you are sitting down to play for the first time, you're not gonna, or at least I didn't pick up on a lot of the ways that I might mitigate it. And I had my leader was really good with influence, and she gave +1 influence to every card that I spent. So the pressure was to use my cards more for influence. But the thing about these influence votes is you need to win them overwhelmingly, or you're going to be susceptible to Booker overturning all of your work anyway.
Yes.
So for me, where I was being pushed in this particular direction with my leader's special ability, I would, and this happened several times, kind of like burn 1, 2, maybe even 3 of my cards at the very beginning of the turn, where I'm not going to get these back and for a whole turn of my action. I'm burning these cards, and then a decent roll on the Booker die and overturns everything. So I found that very frustrating, and that happened multiple times. So I didn't really like it. In a game where I feel there's a lot of luck already, I felt that kind of tipped the balance for me in the direction that I started to get frustrated at that point. Rather than a challenge, I want to fix it, and that may not be the game. That could very well be me, my reaction to it. And I'm not saying that it's a valid or universal reaction, but I found that to be more frustrating than exciting.
Well, that's definitely. I mean, it's there. I got frustrated with Booker a couple times too on that because, but it's interesting.
I think that's theme. I think you're supposed to be
right. He's supposed to be frustrating, and what's interesting about it is his dice. He rolls a white die, and the max value it's a 1 in 6 chance of being a 4, but it's usually a 3, 2, or 1. Yeah. So what you really got to do, you got to win by 5 to be immune to Booker. If you can win by 3 or more, or 4 or more, you're in pretty good in shape. And anything less than that, you've got even chance of really losing to Booker. So it's an interesting dynamic. But I do like that the event cards aren't, because they are awfully powerful. Like some of them are like switch all the units and structures from one spot on the board with any spot elsewhere on the board.
Right.
And that is a game changer. And but you think about it though, in the video game, there's like rifts in space time and things get sucked through. So it thematically makes sense, but it's really a game changer when you're trying to be very tactical. So we did not want that to happen. And Craig basically went all in to make it happen, and it did happen, and it totally changed our situation from being very, very offensive to suddenly very defensive. And so it was a big deal. But I like that there was a chance for us to stop that. So some games, event cards just happen, and they just happen. At least there's a way to stop that a little bit. So it's kind of interesting.
But I would argue that's the vote.
Yes, right. That's what I mean. The vote's nice. Yeah,
it's something really powerful and important that's happening, and you're all throwing cards at it. The chances are really good that you're not going to be overwhelmingly victorious. So the chances are that Booker die is really going to come into effect.
Yep.
And in an atmosphere, in a cultural atmosphere where so many game designers are streamlining and trying to remove frustration from their games, I found this was, and I felt because of the theme, it was very purposeful. So I think they succeeded in what they were doing, but I think it meant to inject frustration into the game.
All right.
Did you guys see much bluffing like during your game?
Yeah.
Like drawing out cards or getting people to play?
Yes.
Yes.
Especially in combat.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. Yeah, it was a big part of the game, which is cool.
And that brings up a question I had about the cards. Like, so is the number the same for the red, the gold, and the silver, or are those different?
No, on every card they're different. So, like one card in particular might be really good at politics, but not so good at combat.
Okay.
Or might be really good at money, but not so good at politics. So, and you can later upgrade them and change them. So as the game progresses, you can change this dynamic. So you can actually. Every time you get an upgrade, and more about those a little bit, but you can put all your upgrades into politics, for example, and make it so your faction is much more politically strong than your opponent's faction. I think break through the Booker thing. I think with repeated plays, you're going to see play styles like that, or put it all into combat, or spread it out evenly. I don't know. So, but there's ways to make it even a stronger play. And I also think that different factions play different ways. So the red side is much more mobile, but less politically strong than the blue side.
But it's much easier to mitigate politics than it is mobility.
Yeah. Except you guys use politics to change half the table, so I don't know. but it's interesting.
But that's all random, so that goes back to that random.
Yep. So anyway, but after the vote, there's also one more bit of information on the bottom of these world event cards. So after the vote, there's a couple icons on the bottom. First of all, there's Elizabeth's face may or may not be there. If Elizabeth's face is there, then on the Elizabeth track on the side of the table, her token's going to move down one on that track, and some plot event with Elizabeth is going to happen. And it could be all kinds of things. Elizabeth, first thing she always does is escapes from her tower and starts traveling around the board wherever Booker is. Okay? While she's with Booker gets an extra dice in combat. She's basically throwing him those weapons and items from the video game. But then later, she does even other things. She opens rifts in space-time, and whoever she happens to be under control of gets money or bonus cards. Or she can actually escape and cause damage and burn through the world event deck. If the world event deck ever goes to 0, the game actually immediately ends, and whoever's got the most victory points at that time wins, because basically Booker and Elizabeth escape the whole world. And it kind of falls. It's kind of you kind of lose, but they still make it so you can win by victory points. So I haven't seen that happen yet, but it's theoretically possible. So she basically was done a timeline, and her story advances, which is just a really lot of interesting fluff and mechanics. But you want to watch her, and it makes you tempted to control Elizabeth, which is tough because you got to keep beating Booker. Speaking of Booker, the other icon you want to look for in the bottom of this thing is Booker's little angry face. And there's also a number on there that tells you which location, all the locations of the board are numbered, where Booker's going to move to next. So you're going to move Booker's little plastic bit to wherever he's going. If he's not angry, if his face is not on the card, he just goes there and he's hanging out and he's doing his own thing and he's not bothering you. If he comes in angry, he will immediately fight any players who are there. And he's a tough nut to crack. And we'll talk more about him in combat in a little bit. But by the way, if Elizabeth is not with him, if she's on the board someplace but not with him, instead of going wherever the location is, he will go to wherever the player who owns Elizabeth is and attempt to rescue her and fight who's ever got Elizabeth and try to break her free. So that's a little bit of the game fluff going on there as well, which is neat. All right, so that's the world events phase. Basically, draw a card, read the vote, do the vote, move Booker to some new location, fight if you got to, and you're ready to move on. Okay? And fights are really quick. We'll talk about combat in a little bit. All right, next up is the player's turn phase. Now it's going to happen and by the way, if the player turn order shifted, so if during the world of voting phase, Craig was player 1, but now I put in 6 influence and he put in 2, I'm now player 1. I immediately get the player 1 token, and now in the player turn phase, I'm player 1. So it shifts immediately. So in player turn phase, each player is going to do all of the following things. They're going to produce, they're going to build, they're going to move, and they're going to have combat. And the next player goes. Remember, in order that little sheet. So light blue, dark blue, or light blue, light red, dark blue, dark red. All right. So producing is very simple. You're going to discard any number of cards from your hand to get the money to equal to all the silver numbers on the card. Okay? So I got 3. Maybe I want to discard all my whole hand to get lots of money. I can do that, but now I'm out of cards. Okay? And you got to produce first before you do anything else if you want to. You don't have to produce, but you can if you want to. Next up is building and recruiting. So building and recruiting basically means you're going to build more plastic stuff and or cardboard structures. There are 3 kinds of plastic in this game. There are guys with square base, which are basically your common guys. There are guys with round bases, which are your special guys. And there are guys with star bases, which are your leaders. And each costs either 3, 4, or 6 silver bucks, right? Structures of this... Craig?
Plastic.
What's that?
You're limited by the number of plastic. So
yes,
you're never going to have more than 1 leader, not including Songbird Airship.
Right, exactly right. And if they die, you got to buy them back for $6, which is pretty expensive. Also, structures are the same way. Structures are either 3, 4, or 6. There's alarm systems, there's turrets, and then, of course, there's your strongholds you can build. More about how those work in a little bit. You can build your stuff anywhere you already have plastic, either plastic or structure. So then you don't have to build back at your base. You can build anywhere you've got a guy. And remember, a special rule in the game, both teammates always are considered to control the airship for the founders, the airship for the Vox Populi, or the Songbird for the founders, meaning that no matter which player you are, you've always got a piece on the board as long as the airship or Songbird is there. So you can always build wherever they are. One other rule, you can't have more than 1 structure in a location. So be careful doing that. And you can't destroy your own structure. So be careful not to build a cheap structure alarm someplace and then later want to make it a stronghold because you're kind of stuck. Unless you lose a battle or something. All right, so building's very simple. You're going to spend either 3, 4, or 6. You can recruit as much as you can afford the plastic for or cardboard for. So you can do that. But again, you got to get the money, and to get the money, you got to produce the cards. So building doesn't take any cards, but you're going to discard your cards to get money. All right, next up is moving. Moving's pretty simple as well. You're going to move 4 pieces, and you're going to pick 4 pieces of plastic to move them. Normally when you move, you're going to move each piece only 1 space to an adjacent space. Now, an adjacent location is any location that shares a blue border and has a little arrow, double-headed arrow pointing back and forth. So this is basically moving from one spot of a floating island to another spot of a floating island. So if you're going to move 4 guys, that's your whole move. Each guy moves 1. But when you move, you can either walk to an adjacent space or you can ride the sky rails. Craig, do you remember how riding the sky rails works?
I do. It's a press luck mechanic where you roll 3 dice, and they have 2 thumbs up on each. Each die has 2 thumbs up, and then numbers. Numbers between 0 and 2.
I think so.
0 and 3.
I think it's 0 and 2.
I think it's 0 and 2. And you roll, and if any of those dice are thumbs up, then your guy made it from. You're basically measuring from the region or the territory he's in to the next territory he wants to go in, and the sky rail, which is a cool little graphic design that's like a roller coaster ride that goes all over the board, kind of shoots and laddersy. And there's a series of little dots all along that are stations, and you count up how many dots you have to pass to get to where you want to be, and that's how many times you have to roll these dice. And every time you roll these dice, if you roll a thumbs up or any thumbs up, you're good. If you roll no thumbs up, you have to add the numbers up, and that's how many cards you have to discard or your guy dies. Mm-hmm. So yet another way that your cards will disappear from your hand.
Exactly.
If you're unlucky.
Yep. So if you roll really badly, if you roll 3 1s, that's 3 cards, which you don't often have at this point if you've been spending them on politics and or money, or you're trying to save them for combat. So, you'll fall to your death and be like, I'm just going to kill that guy. But if you're trying to move across to your leader or one of your more important pieces, you're probably going to spend the cards if you can afford it.
And it's important to note that this is the only way to move from region to region.
Yeah.
So you need to move from region to region in order to win the game.
Yep. So
it can be to me it was another instance of frustration being built into the game because and this one's all me because I know people love push. The Russ loves push his luck games.
Yeah.
And but for me it was another element of okay, it's my big guy, I'm going to do it, and I die, or I lose all my cards, and my cards are already depleted anyway because of everything else I'm going to do. So it seemed to me like there was a lot of places in the game where they were like, this could be really cool because in the video game these guys fall down all the time. Let's make that possibility, like that could be threatening. This could be threatening. It's a very threatening environment in which you're playing.
Oh yes, actually I love this mechanic, and I would like to see it in more games. The mechanic of some movement is risky or dangerous, I think is missing in all ancient warfare games with sea travel involved. Because in history, it's never been easy to go from point A to point B on a boat. You get hit by a storm, you lose half your fleet. And what's cool about this is when you've got those 4 moves, like you're trying to bring 4 guys from point A to point B, you move the first guy, you roll the dice. Oh, they made it. Okay, good. The first guy made it. You move the second guy, you roll the dice. Oh, crap, he died. Okay, it's only one guy. It's fine. I'm good with that. I'll let him die. Okay. Move the third guy, he makes it. You move the fourth guy, you lose a card. So 3 of your 4 guys you moved. And the guy that dies, you still count as a movement point for him. So that's one less guy you can move. So you only get 3 guys in. So you're hoping to attack with a full 4 guys. You only got in with 3, and you had to burn a card, too, which technically reduces your combat options as well. So you're really getting so it gives the defender kind of a nice thing because you're coming on the sky rail. So it represents the fact your guys, in the video game, you can shoot them down as they come in. It makes it hard to assault from the sky rail, which also feels like the kind of thing, I think it'd be you could just take this mechanic and copy it to any game where there'd be a beach landing. Because it's harder to hit from a beach landing than it is to walk in from, across the land. So I thought this was a really cool way to handle that. I'd like to see it in Risk and other games. I thought it was really slick.
But did you guys found that kind of promotes like stagnation or turtling with the other players?
Can't.
You can't because you need to you need to move out to win.
Yeah.
So you don't really. And the other thing too is your common units. The common units kind of feel throwaway because they're $3, which is kind of expensive, but you can always generate at least $3 pretty easily a turn. So you can make it. You're making new cheap guys. You only get burnt, as Craig says, when you're really trying to get that special piece across or a leader across, and he dies.
Yeah. So that's where you get a cheap guy across, you can then build from that cheap guy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right.
But on top of that, though, saying $3 is easy is not necessarily the case, depending on again, more luck involved, because it's all going to be the cards that you're getting.
That's true.
That's where your money's going to come from. Right. And if you're being pressured to use your cards in other places, you're not like I never had money for the entire game. And in fact, I bought one model. You were being used as the plastic in the whole game.
You were being used as Mr. Influence, and that was hurting you on the money side.
Yes, and it was hurting me when I was constantly being messed over by Booker. So.
Yes. Now there's another luck mitigation, and that is that the red team, the Vox Populi, have a special rule on some of their cards, which allows them to move their guys up to 3 stops on the sky roll without rolling. This is an ability they have to unlock with upgrades. But it does give them a way to mitigate it and get in. So their faction is much more mobile. The Comstock faction is much more defensive. And it sounds like it gives them a huge advantage. But to date, we've only seen the blue side win. So I'm still working on getting the red side to win a battle. But one other movement rule I want to mention, though, is that the 2 special pieces, the Songbird and the Airship, they get to move. They because they can fly, their rule is they can move to 2 stops on the sky rail without rolling dice. That represents them just flying along.
Which I thought was very cool because it didn't give them free reign to go in wherever, but at the same time, it was risk-free.
So these 2 pieces are really handy to make that major assault, right? To move to that new land because you bring them in without fear of them falling. You roll in 1 common unit, and you hope you get lucky and get him in there. And then you bring in a much more. Now you're getting 1 really powerful unit in there, which throws a red die, which is really powerful, and a bunch of regular dudes in there to support him, or maybe 1 or 2. So it's a really it kind of forces certain patterns of assault, but you can make risky attacks if you want to. And that's movement. And then last thing that happens in your player turn
is combat. And so any places after your movement, and you can start as many combats as you want. So after you move, any places where you're going to have to fight, you're going to have battles. And so it's going to be a battle wherever you've got pieces where your opponent has pieces, or any place where you move the guy and there's a territory card. Remember those face-down territory cards you put there? When you move in, we're going to flip those face up to see their power, and then have to deal with them. So a word about combat a little bit later. So you're going to fight. Combat's going to be over. After combat, the next player goes. So then it's Craig's turn. And Craig's going to produce. He's going to discard cards for money. He's going to build some units based on how much money he wants to have. Then he's going to do his movement, which may involve sky rails or may not. And then he's going to fight combat, and then it's going to be the next player's turn. Does that all make sense, Ted?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. As Craig's mentioning, he's absolutely right. There's a lot of tough decisions to make with your cards, but the game mechanics themselves, really pretty simple.
Absolutely.
So it's very easy to teach, which I like a lot. And the last thing that happens after all the players have gone, then it's the refresh phase. So in the refresh phase, I get to draw cards again. Oh, thank God, because you spent all those cards. So now you're going to draw back to 5 cards. If you by some miracle still have cards left in your hand and during the refresh phase, you may discard as many as you want, or none, if you want to keep some good cards for next turn. And then you draw back up to 5 cards. So at the end of the refresh phase, you're going to have 5 cards again. The other big thing happens in the refresh phase is another victory point card from the victory point deck goes face up. So in the refresh phase of each turn, another victory condition gets exposed. It doesn't replace the old one either. So more and more. So as the game progresses, there's more and more ancillary ways to get victory points in addition to controlling those territories.
And quite often you can actually have that flip and have already succeeded in doing what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Or if it says you need to own X number of these, if you do, and you're player number 1, right, Russ? You have to be.
Yeah, it goes to player order.
Then you automatically get that point.
Right. So if it says like own 7 locations, your faction, and sometimes they'll say your faction, and sometimes they say you. When it says your faction, it means your team. When it says you, it means a single player. So it might say you own 3 strongholds. That means you personally. But it might say your faction controls 4 territories. That means 4 like continents, if you will, floating areas. So if you own 4 of those, you immediately get. And that was a big one. It's 3 victory points. It's huge. So that's pretty much, with the exception of combat, the whole game. And then you just rinse and repeat. You go back to the beginning, you have another world event. You vote that out. You figure all that out. Booker and Elizabeth move around. They fight somebody maybe they don't. Then you go to player turn again. You produce, you move, you attack, you fight, you ride some sky rails. You have combat. You're fresh. You do it again. That's the whole game. So now I know what you're wondering, though. How does fighting work? Right, Ted? That's what you're asking yourself.
Well, I had another question.
Yes, go for it.
Just like thinking about the game. So the victory point cards, are they kind of like tough? Like, because I imagine at the end you're like, I want to hold on to this. I think I could get it next turn, but it's kind of taking up a space in your deck, I guess.
Yeah, so they are tough. Like, one of them is, they're face up. So not in your deck. They're face up on the table as like victory conditions.
They're a different deck.
Yeah.
Oh, they're a different deck. All right, forget it then.
Yeah, they're a whole different deck face up. So imagine new victory
I thought they were
conditions.
one of the cards you had to play. So
Oh, no, they're face up. So the whole table sees them. So the whole table sees that one of the current victory conditions is controlling 4 territories. Right? So that's how that works. But you do things like in the first game I played, there's a victory condition that we didn't see last time, Craig, which is each turn, most of them you only score them once, and once they're scored, no one can score them again. Like control 4 territories, have 3 strongholds. But one of them is, for each turn your faction controls Elizabeth, you get a victory point on this card.
Really?
And so what happened was, I was playing with Josh, and he managed to capture Elizabeth and hold off. But the problem is, when Booker fights, and we'll talk about combat in a second, he is the equivalent of like 3 leader units.
Wow.
And so he's nasty. He's hard to beat. So we had to have like all of Josh's pieces together. We're holding off Booker every turn and keeping Elizabeth capturing, scoring 1 permanent victory point a turn. So there's things that'll happen in the victory point cards that are really going to dictate your play style. And it may or may not be a good idea. It turned out for us that was a good idea, but later I tried to do something in the game with Craig. We tried to do something based on those 2, and it turned out to not be a good idea. And we actually ended up losing, I think, because we focused too heavily on holding Elizabeth. So it really depends on what's going on with the victory point cards, but they can lead you down a dangerous path, I think, sometimes. All right, so combat. There's really 3 kinds of combat that can happen here, but let's talk about the most common, which is fighting another player. So let's say Craig and I are going to fight. So what happens is first, the attacker, the guy that moved into the square, he's going to lock in some number of his combat cards first. Now what's going to happen is each piece gets to roll a die, each piece of plastic involved in the combat. And the kind of dice it rolls...
And cardboard.
Yes, and cardboard. And the kind of die they roll is based on the kind of piece they are. So the more common pieces roll the cheesy white dice. The special pieces, the round bases, the handymen, they roll a blue die, which is better than the white dice by a factor of 2, basically. Oh, not quite 2, but by a factor. And then the leader pieces, the star pieces, the songbird, the blimp, and your leaders, roll a red die, which is really, really good. It goes up to a value of 8 on a d6. So I'm going to roll one of these for each of these pieces. But then all the cards I lock in are going to add whatever the red combat values on those cards are added together to the sum of my die total. So I'm going to roll all the dice I get to roll with my plastic, add all those numbers together, add the value of my cards, and I'm hoping to beat my opponent. In the case of a tie, the defender wins. So I really want to beat my opponent. So I, as the attacker, lock my cards in. Craig doesn't know what they are, but he knows I've locked in 2 cards.
Right. Which is key to remember, because in no other game that I've ever played in that had a mechanic like this where you're adding cards, have you ever been able to use more than one card.
Right.
So I went through probably 2/3 of the game we played, putting down one card at a time, thinking that was my only option. And only later on found out that it wasn't. Not that I had enough cards to throw more than one card at a time, but it's good to know that you have that option if you need it.
And here's the thing about that, though. So I might throw in all my hand on an attack, but the thing to remember is if later in the same turn, let's say, Ted, you attack me, if I put all my cards on offense against Craig early and burnt them all, I got nothing to defend with.
Right.
So it's really a tough decision. Or if I got multiple battles this turn, if I'm going offensive in 2 different directions, I got to save those cards and figure out how to best play them to work my odds out.
And to answer your question, Ted, about bluffing, this is where bluffing happens the most.
Yeah, I would say so too. So we lock our cards in, and then we flip them over and show what our cards are, and then we're going to roll our dice based on the plastic we have. Now, I already talked about the plastic. So the commons give you white, the specials give you blue, and the leaders give you red, right? One for each type. But then also structures help you out. There are 3 kinds of structures in this game. There's alarms, which look like little whistles. There are turrets, which look like little turrets from the video game. And there are strongholds, which are giant big buildings. Alarms are key because what they do is they add a white die to the pool, but also they add +1 to all your dice results. Each die is +1, which is huge. So alarms are great on defense. The turret adds a blue die to the pool, which is better than the alarm's white die. And the turrets add a blue die to any combat involving you in any adjacent square to the turret. So the turrets project power to their space they're in, plus all adjacent spaces.
Now, is that for you and your partner, or just you?
That's for you and your faction, your ally. Yep. Because you can have mixed colors in the same square. So I can, in other words, my ally and we can have light blue and dark blue in the same place. If there's more light blue than dark blue, then I technically play my card. I control the battle, but the dark blue pieces still contribute to the light blue battle, if that makes sense. So basically, for the purpose of the battle, I control it, but all the pieces are mine for that moment. All right. So you're going to roll the dice, add the totals, add the bonuses for your structures. Oh, and strongholds add a red die to the pool. And the other thing strongholds do is, let's say Craig wins and I lose. If you lose a battle, one of your plastic pieces dies, your choice. So hopefully you've got a common piece you can throw away. That's why you never go to battle with just your songbird or just your blimp, because if you lose, you got to kill one piece of plastic. It's going to have to be the songbird or the blimp. You can buy them back, but they're $6. They're expensive, so you really don't want to do that. So you always want to bring a cheap common guy with you, so if you lose, you can throw him away. Everybody else, so let's say you had 4 guys in the battle, you lose one common guy. The other 3 go back to whichever stronghold you control that you want to put them in. Doesn't have to be adjacent, doesn't have to be nearest. Anywhere on the map you have a stronghold that matches your color, not your ally's color, your color, you put them in. If you have no strongholds, your pieces are all dead. So do not lose all your strongholds, Craig.
Yes, that is painful.
Yes, it is.
For instance, you get one of those quote-unquote really powerful cards that allows you to transform 2 spaces so that you can move all of your really powerful stuff into the middle of the bad guy's zone, and then they kill it all.
Yeah. I tried to silently tell you that was not a good idea.
No, you did not. That was
all right.
Jedi mind trick all the way, and I knew you were doing it, but it wasn't working on anybody else, so I assumed maybe I was just being overly judgmental of my large head.
Actually, I know that was painful for you, but I think that really did throw our game off because we couldn't advance anymore.
I think it certainly did cost you some time and resources to take care of me, but it was still frustrating from my point of view, as I just watched my guys all die slow deaths.
So that's pretty much combat. Does the combat make sense, Ted?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the whole thing. And the other 2 combat conditions that can happen is, let's say you're fighting a location tile. So let's say you moved into a space that no one's ever been in before. It's got one of those face-down location tiles in it. You flip that tile over. On the top of that tile is a big red number. Let's say it's an 11. That means you've got to beat an 11 in combat. Beat, not equal. Beat 11 in combat to take it over. So again, you're going to fight it just like you fight another player, except the tile gets no cards. So you're going to get to play any cards you want. You're going to get to roll all your dice, and you're hoping to beat an 11. If you do, you capture the territory, but also on the bottom of that tile is a number in silver, and that is how much money you also get for beating it. So the good news is you do get more money for defeating a harder territory, but the bad news is if you got 11s all around you, it's a tough fight to get 11. So it's hard to expand. And final thing you could do is fight Booker. So if Booker shows up in your territory and he's upset, he's got a mad face on his thing, or you've captured Elizabeth, he's going to fight you. Or if you enter a territory with Booker in it, he will not fight you automatically, but you can choose to attack him. Now, reasons you might voluntarily attack Booker include there are victory points that say, like victory cards that say, get a victory point if you defeat Booker. So maybe you want to kill Booker. Or maybe you want to control Elizabeth. Because if you kill Booker and Elizabeth's with him, you now control Elizabeth. And anytime good things happen to the player who controls Elizabeth, that's who you want to be. The bad thing about controlling Elizabeth is, remember, every time a world event card comes up, if Booker doesn't have Elizabeth with her, he always goes to whoever's controlling Elizabeth and tries to beat them up. So, and how good is the Booker in a fight? Booker throws 3 red dice, which is the same as 3 songbirds or 3 blimps. It is just nasty. His max value on those is they're 8s max, so he could roll theoretically a 24. We've seen it happen. It's not a pretty picture. Also, is if Elizabeth is with Booker, so if Booker has Elizabeth with him, and he moves somewhere else, because let's say the card says go here and he's angry, Elizabeth and Booker fight together, and remember in the game, here, Booker, catch! Elizabeth throws ammo, throws extra power-ups. Elizabeth adds another blue die. So with Elizabeth, Booker's throwing 3 red die and a blue die. That is nasty. That's basically 4 units. That is really hard to beat. So Booker is no easy win against. The only good news is he has no cards to back up his dice rolls. So, Craig, how'd you feel about fighting Booker? Was he tough?
He never seemed tough to me because every time he landed anywhere near you guys, you had all of your stuff with you, you had Elizabeth with you, so he was coming straight at you. And you literally had 2 leaders and a turret and 2 handymen and at least 1 weedy guy at any time. So not once did you ever fight Booker and you needed to do the math on the dice.
No, that's true. But we had set it up, and I think this is what cost us the game. We kept all of our pieces there to defend Elizabeth, the control against Booker. And what ended up happening was, while we were doing that, and I was not moving the blimp out, because I was afraid Booker would come beat us if I didn't do that. Right. By leaving it all there, it allowed Matt to defend against Blake for many, many turns and allow you guys to capture all the territory and actually win the game. So I think because I was so scared of how powerful Booker was, we had overkill to kill him, and it may have cost us the bigger game.
Yeah, I'd buy that for $1.
All right. Now we should talk about upgrades real quick. So there are things that can happen in the game that get you free upgrades. Whenever you win the first player token, you get a free upgrade. So this is kind of a nice Benny, because if you're spending all those cards in getting political victory, but you now have nothing left to do with combat, at least you're getting an upgrade for your team. Whenever you win a battle, you get an upgrade. Whenever you score one of those victory point cards, you get an upgrade. Or you can spend $3 during the produce phase to buy an upgrade if you want to. I wouldn't recommend that, though, because you get them so many other different ways. When you get an upgrade, you can play there's that little reference mask, all these places you can upgrade stuff. Now, most ability cards, remember those cards, the numbers on them? On the bottom, there's text, and there's a lock next to those texts, and they don't actually work. So, for example, the Handyman card, his combat value is 3, but his text on the bottom says that if you play this Handyman card by itself, his combat value doubles from 3 to 6, which is huge. But to get that ability to work, you have to unlock it. And to unlock it, you need to get an upgrade. So if you say you get an upgrade, you say, I want to unlock the Handyman's ability. You take a key token, and you put it next to the Handyman's face on your card, and that tells you that his ability is now unlocked and you can use it. The other thing you can do for upgrades is, below on the upgrade sheet, there's a picture of every card. You can put a key there to unlock their ability, but also there's a symbol for each of the different kinds of values on the card. The combat value, the money value, and the political value. You can put +1s there and increase the political value, for example, of all handyman cards. Or you can increase the monetary value of all shotgun cards. Whatever you want to do. This allows you to tilt your deck in a certain way or tilt certain card types in a certain way. For example, for the Comstock faction, the Patriot card is already worth, I think, 3 influence in politics. Yep. So you might want to upgrade that to make it +1 to make it worth 4, because you're probably going to spend it in influence anyway. And you can upgrade that twice. The maximum value is +2 to these values. So you can really crank some of this stuff up and really make your cards very valuable in certain situations. Or you can just constantly do political upgrades on all your cards, and suddenly all your cards are pretty good at politics. So you can kind of try to build it's not a deck building game, but you can kind of build how some of your cards work, which is sort of interesting. And it gives you that video game upgrade feeling. What did you think of the upgrade system, Craig?
I thought it was very complex and layered.
It was complex and layered, and also the only part I didn't like about it was that you just put tokens on top of this sheet, and if you weren't careful and you bumped it by accident, you lose all your upgrades. So you got to kind of watch this.
It's a very chaotic table playing this game, and one of the most chaotic parts are these two faction sheets that track all of these upgrades. But yeah, to be honest, in the second half of the game, I wasn't even paying attention to that card. There was so much stuff going on and so many little pieces of cardboard and +1s and +2s and locks and unlocks, and I was looking at these cards, and I never even got to the point where I could use a card on its text because I needed the first 3 numbers. And so I was like, I think those cards are huge for people who really want to master this game, and that's where you're going to mitigate your luck, and that's where you're going to really be able to massage your faction to play the way you want to play. But I think it's going to take some time and effort to learn how to work it is what I thought.
Yeah, I think that is where the repeated play mastery comes in, and that is where the luck mitigation is. But I think you're right; it's tough to master. we're just picking stuff because we're like, well, I don't know, let's pick this because we didn't know. We don't know the decks well enough to know that this is the card you'll usually play for politics. Upgrade that politic. This is the card. We didn't know that very well. So this is where the repeated plays are going to help. And that's pretty much the whole game. We've already talked about all the other nuances. Ted, does that all make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, cool. So let's wrap up with our final thoughts here. We're going a little long, but I want to be sure. So, Craig, in the style of a fanatical political leader, please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Fanatical political leader?
Sure, yeah.
Nah. Okay. Now listen up. Okay, I'm only going to say this once. The man has been putting us down for too long. Too long. I think what we have to do is we have to start regulating all of the ways he's putting us down. He's putting us down. So what we got to do is we got to start listing all of the ways the man is putting us down in order of how bad it is. Bad, it's bad. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to rate it. And if it's really, really bad, we're going to give it like a high number, like a 6. And if it's really, if it's really bad, we're going to give it a low number. No, high number. Oh, forget about it. If it's a low number, it's good. If it's a high number, it's right. Now let's burn something.
Nice. All right, the lower the better. There you go.
Lower number is good. Higher number is bad.
Nice, Craig. All right, great. All right, so who wants to go first? Craig, you want to go first?
Sure, I will go first.
All right, go ahead.
I am a complete stranger, as you all know, to the theme Bioshock Infinite, having just suffered through the audiobook Bioshock Rapture. So right off the bat, I was like, "Is this anything to do with that?" Because actually, I would have at least cued into it better. But it seemed to me that it was extremely well executed, and everyone around us who was familiar with it thought it was awesome. So I give it the points on theme right off the bat, even though it's not really my area of expertise.
Yeah, we had a crowd of spectators actually watching for a while there. People were interested in the whole Bioshock thing going on.
Yeah. Now, for me, I found the resource management to be a big headache, which is pretty much a constant theme in my game playing. I don't really like games that are completely centered around resource management, where the math that goes into the game is such that you are constantly desperate for stuff that you're not going to have enough of. I don't like it. I feel like that's real life, and I need money, and I don't have money. And so that's right there is going to be like the first hit for me. The cards do 4 different things. Each of those 4 different things might have multiple effects on the game. You've only got 5 cards per turn, so you're constantly going to be in need of cards. Your leader card, like I said, has a very important role in mitigating this headache and kind of pushing you in a specific direction, but a weak pull on that is going to affect your game also. And I already talked about my influence, focus leader, and what happened with Booker, and that was very frustrating as well. I've said several times, luck is huge in this game. The luck of your hand, the luck of the mission deck that comes out, where Elizabeth goes in the timeline, what timeline you pull, the world event deck, the die rolling. It just seems like every time you turn around, there's another card flipping, which by the very nature of cards is going to be another random thing that you're not going to really be able to figure out unless and until you've played the game enough that you know what you're going to face ahead of time, or at least you have an idea of what the chances are. There are also ways to mitigate the luck, as we've said, but I do think the learning curve is brutal, figuring out the upgrades, everything like that. I think there's so much going on in this game that it's very confusing. If you do not, I don't know that you can sit down with only casual interest and really lock into this game and have a good time, unless you're inclined towards this kind of game. You've got the main board going, you've got the 2 faction boards going, you've got the Elizabeth board going, you've got the victory point stacks that Russ talked about, and you've got the mission cards trailing out, which every turn that trail of cards is going to be longer and longer and longer. So on top of your little piles of plastic and cardboard and money, you've got all this stuff going on. So it's a very chaotic board. I thought it was easy to teach or easy to learn. Russ, I think, had a very good and easy way an easy run teaching us. But at the same time, because again of all those, that learning curve element and all the different interactions with the upgrade board and knowing all those different decks or figuring it out, I think there's mastery is going to be a long time coming unless you're going to go home and study those cards. So I found it overall to be, I felt the theme. I felt the theme in my frustration. Mm-hmm. I think they really did a good job of the theme. I think everything that I found frustrating or not overly entertaining was there for a purpose, and it served that purpose, and that purpose was having a different effect on everybody else that was playing. So I think it's more me interacting with the game than any weakness of the game itself. That being said, having talked to a bunch of our friends locally, because I didn't want to base my rating on just my own experience, I would say that I'm fairly confident giving this game a 4+. And I'm going to give it a +1 if you really like this kind of it's not Risk at all, but I'll say Risk-like game where
dudes
you're
on a map.
Story and exactly. A +1 if you like that, or if you like Bioshock, and a -1 if you really don't like multiple layers of luck that are going to constantly be boiling up to recreate new or to create all new experiences and confusions. Or if you just don't really like games that have multiple layers of frustration built into them. But that being said, that's also where I think the replayability comes in. So I think this is going to be a great game for some people, and it's going to be a frustrating game for others. And so I sit there very calmly and confidently on a 4+.
That's a good recommendation. So Ted, I'll let you go last since you're the guest. So I'll go next. You have the final word here. So this game really captures the theme extremely well. It really does feel like Bioshock. I think it does a great job with that. And you're right. The running around with Booker and attacking people is very random, but that's totally the video game. And so I think they did a great job with that. But even without the theme, I like this as a dudes on the map game. I think it's just a really strong, conquer the world kind of game. I love the components. I love how it's easy to teach. One of my favorite conquer the world games is Game of Thrones. I like the game a lot, but that's a tough game to teach because there's all these different orders, and then how does support work and boats work and raids work, and this game is so easy to teach. Now you're right; it's very hard to master, but it's very easy to get the basics that after one turn you got that, and now you're trying to figure out how to play your cards. I feel like I didn't feel as luck swingy as you maybe felt, but I felt like I could mitigate it, but I felt like I didn't know the game well enough how to mitigate it. So I felt like there was a way to learn that, but it wasn't in front of me. Obviously, I have to play it more, but I like that kind of challenge. That appealed to me. And I talked about this already, I love the way the Skyline system moves. I'd like to see other systems that have, when you have risky movement, like any old world combat game like Ancient Rome or, fighting in the Mediterranean or those kind of things. If they're going across water, I love this movement style. I really thought that was cool. And I like, too, like I'm thinking of Game of Thrones again. I love Game of Thrones, but when those event cards come up, like nobody can recruit this turn. You can't stop that. But in this game, it's like if we had to recruit this turn, okay, we can burn our hands to stop that at least and mitigate that. I really like that too. Also, I think it plays pretty fast for a 4-player game of World Conquest. Most of those games, you're looking at 2 hours minimum, usually closer to 3 or 4. This game plays pretty quick. We had a 45-minute game. I think Craig and my game last night went for almost right to 2 hours. But I think with a couple plays, this will be an hour and a half game almost every time, which I think is a nice speed.
I think that swing is indicative of how much luck and randomness is in the game, though.
I think that's fair. And I don't know, and I'm going to be interested to see if I play it more, when I play it more, because I want to play it 3 times, I'll play it more, if I can mitigate that swing. Is there a way to sort of avoid that, or just to be early bloody fight and it's over? I don't know. It is static setup, but I like how the event cards, moving things around, and the territory things and other things, keep it fresh. You never know what's going to happen. We had one game where we basically held Booker the whole game to try to get the victory condition. Other games, the Booker, the Elizabeth time check never even moved. It's totally different every time, which I really like. But to Craig's point, it does make it random, so that's going to affect my rating. But it's going to be my go-to global conquest game. I really like it. My only dings on it are the upgrade sheets are easy to nudge and lose all your upgrades, so you really got to watch those. And I agree with Craig, the table does look very, very busy. And while you can mitigate the luck, it's definitely there. If you're a person who does not like luck in your war games, this will not appeal to you. So for my rating, I'm going to start with Craig. I think this is a 4+ game, but I think it's +2 for anybody who's a fan of World Conquest games or a fan of Bioshock. That makes it a 2+ game. I think you're going to like it a lot. But I'm going to give it a -1 for everybody who doesn't like luck in their games. If you want a game that's purely strategy with very little luck in it, this is not for you, because there's a lot of swings in here that are going to be fun to try to deal with, but if you don't like to deal with that, that's not for you.
Right.
So, Ted, after all that, what kind of thoughts do you have?
Well, not having played the game, but looking at the images you guys posted and listening to the descriptions, it sounded really interesting. I'm a fan of the Bioshock world, so that instantly got me excited about the game. I also like Risk. I mean, I grew up playing Risk all the time, so I love those kinds of games. And when I saw the board, I thought of that, like the way that there are all those different locations, they're connected, with the rails, and it really, just appealed to me, the look of it. I like the idea of the pieces, like the idea that you can play in a faction with other people, and that they took the consideration of making the 2 different colors of the blue and the red. I just thought that was a cool little addition. And also that there are hero NPCs that are moving around the board and that come into play, but you're not playing one of those NPCs or not playing like one of the main characters in the game. I thought that was kind of a cool little thing. I guess like you, Russ, when you were describing the rail system, at first it sounded a little too random, but your analogy of it being like a beach landing really, really sounded cool. And I agree with you. Like, I love games where, when you're trying to do a D-Day kind of thing, that's a really risky move, and you better make sure you come with a lot of extra troops when you try to do that. And also, I think you guys said the hero units can move without the risk up to two spots. So I thought that kind of offset that and kind of seemed like a good alternative. I was thinking it'd be cool if the hero could bring a unit or 2 with him, but, that's just wishful thinking. I also like the cards with the red, the gold, and the silver. Yep. I thought that was a cool mechanic and how you use those. And I actually like the victory card idea. I think it's cool when there's a goal and you kind of have to go for it. Like you guys were talking about, like, hey, we have to protect Elizabeth and let's go for it. But that by doing that, you're also opening up the territory. And I think you said the other player captured the territory and ended up winning. So I think that's a cool kind of balance of like choice and which way you want to go. And then that probably affects how you want to take your upgrades and those kinds of things. Yep. The only thing I didn't like that I heard was something at the beginning about the having a fixed setup. I'm not a fan of those kinds of games where this is the way you always start the game. But it sounds like that doesn't really affect the game long term. So it's probably mitigated by that. Plus, you said the baddies in the different locations are randomized. So that also would mitigate it. So it's not a big thing. And I'm not a fan of like all these little pieces that, if someone bumps the table, everything moves and you forget where your upgrades are and that kind of stuff. So that sounds like it could be a pain. But man, it looks gorgeous. I love just the game board looks like a beautiful painting. And I'm a sucker for visuals, having the art background and stuff.
Nice. So what's your percent chance?
That just sells it.
What's your percent chance on a D6 you're going to buy it when you see it in the store?
I'd give it a 90% chance.
All right. That's like a 2+ right there.
Yeah.
With a reroll almost. Yeah.
I think I'd definitely pick this game up. It looks really cool.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Well, Ted, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy, riveting schedule. See what I just said?
Awesome to have you on the show.
It has been fantastic. So nice to virtually meet you. And if people want to know more about what you're up to and the status of Rivet Wars and all that stuff, where should they go?
Go to rivetwars.com or follow me on Facebook or Twitter. And like I said, we're going to be at Gen Con. We're going to have a huge diorama there showing off some of the miniatures.
Nice.
And we're also going to be demoing the game at the Cool Mini or Not booth. So come check it out.
Very
awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you there at Gen Con, Ted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I hope to see you guys. That'd be awesome.
Great.
Oh, you will.
You will be there. All right. Thanks, Ted.
Cool.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Are you looking for news, reviews, and interviews? The D6 generation. It's groovy as groovy does define, baby. The D6 generation. Born to game. Oh yeah.
Hey, welcome back. And now we're going to talk a little bit about our friends at Geek Nation Tours, Terrace and the team, who put together these amazing vacations specifically for geeks by geeks.
Yes, indeed. And what's great about Geek Nation Tours is when they take you on a tour, they don't take you just to the place you're going to see something, like let's say you're going to see Comic-Con in New York City, but they also show you other geeky things in and around the area to make sure you don't miss out on all kinds of cool stuff. Like Terrace just got back from the big Gettysburg tour. He's got pictures on there, looks fantastic. So you feel like, seeing battlefields around that. What looks fantastic now, though, what I'm watching for really here is the upcoming Geek Nation Tours tour. Of Comic-Con, New York City Comic-Con. Craig, have you been watching that thing?
Yes, I am a super fan of New York City.
Of course.
And I just love this whole geek take on New York City. And I think it's just an awesome whole way to go about looking or experiencing New York City.
Right. They take it to all the iconic locations there, as well as some special geeky stuff that you may not be aware of in the city as well. So what you want to do to find this stuff, like maybe you want to meet a famous cosplayer or all kinds of craziness, what you want to do is go to geeknationtours.com and click on their upcoming tours tab. And that'll tell you all the great tours. It's got great icons in there with logos that tell you if it's a Star Trek convention or maybe if it's a Battlefield tour or maybe it's Cowboys, a dual con going on. Whatever you want to know, it's all there. What you want to do then is once you call Terrace and you decide, okay, I want to go on this cool tour, let Terrace know you heard about it here on the D6 generation and he will hook you up with an official D6G stitched patch.
You will.
So let him know about that and we'll take care of you that way as well. So check out geeknationtours.com.
This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by the Cranky Lawyer, who just wants to say one more time, let my Rhinox riders go! Do you ever notice how sometimes people can get really aggressive in what most of us would consider an inappropriate context? For instance, maybe at a game they get really aggressive and they want to just crush their opponents and they don't have a lot of fun, they just look really mean. Or what about in business, when you're trying to do a business deal with somebody or you're trying to negotiate a price for something and all of a sudden they just start getting in your face and they get all angry and agitated? Well, that's happened to me several times over the past few weeks, and it started to make me think a little bit. What if these people were not trying to be aggressive, but they were misunderstanding the connection between aggression and confidence? This whole thought process started when I was talking to my sister about children, and she was talking about one child in particular and said that the child needed confidence. And I said that the child looked confident enough to me, and she said, oh, no, look, he's not getting in other kids' faces and stuff. And that's when I started to think that maybe throughout our culture, we often misunderstand and misconstrue aggression for confidence, because the kid that my sister was talking about is very confident, would get up on all kinds of toys and climb up on the mountains and jump down into the sand with all the other kids. But when an aggressive kid came up to the kid, he sort of looked at him quizzically, shook his head, and then walked away. And my sister's like, well, he's got to stand up for himself. And I said, well, why would he have to stand up for himself if there's plenty of other places for him to play? And I think that started this thought in my head, because then I had a lot of yard work done recently, and in the process of negotiating with the ex-con handyman that my wife loves to hire in her ongoing efforts to rehabilitate the universe, a little leftover residue from her social worker days. And we had agreed on a price, and they had done all of the work that we asked them to do to a moderately okay level. And I went out to pay them, and they tried to renegotiate. And I started to say, like, well, we're not really renegotiating because we agreed on a price. And then he started coming at me, and I was thinking, this guy thinks that he's going to bully me into more money, which is kind of crazy. And so I started giving him a lecture, which I don't think he was anticipating, on business management. And if he wants to better his business, he really needs to stick to his plan when he negotiates a price. And it really was, I started to get angry, and I started to think in my head, am I being aggressive? No, I think I'm being confident because I know what's going on. And so I thought, again, this connects to this whole aggression versus confidence thing. And then I thought back to, of course, that archetypal game I played of War Machine all those many years ago, where that guy just right off the bat started swearing at me and saying the worst things about my models and my gameplay. And I thought, this guy thinks he's confident, but he's not. He's aggressive. And there's a difference. And I bet he's not so confident. Not that that matters, because I'm not going to turn this around and go, so the next time someone's aggressive to you, think about it from their perspective and give them a hug. No. I'm thinking more along the lines of, it's nice to understand a jerk, and then you can avoid him maybe a little bit better. But that's basically what I was thinking. And of course, this sounds very different because I'm supposed to be in Maine right now, and due to a series of miscommunications, this Did You Ever Notice didn't get recorded until 10 minutes after I was supposed to leave. And of course, that's when my entire soundboard crapped out on me. So that is also why you might have noticed the rapid fire shout out sounded a little weird, because now that we're in some sort of strange time, it gets recorded at different times. And I think sometimes seamlessly, and I think this time not so much. So I'm going to leave you there because I've got to run as I'm getting daggers thrown at my head. And I will talk to you guys on the other side. That's all I've got to say this time around, so thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
It's my own design, it's my own remorse. Help me to decide, help me make the most of pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule. There's a room where the night won't find you. Holding hands while the walls come tumbling down.